McLaren against McLaren, Senna against Prost. If today's race is anything like yesterday's qualifying, what a duel it's going to be. And what a turn-up it'll be if one of the other 24 cars in the field can cause an upset. This is race day here in Grand Prix City, and what a day we've got planned for you. We'll take you into pit lane to learn some of the high-tech secrets of Formula One racing. We'll find out just what a brutal strain it can be on the men who pilot these four-wheel bullets. And we'll show you that life for a Grand Prix driver is not all hard work and no play. They know how to enjoy themselves as well. So do the fans, of course. It's party time in Adelaide this weekend, and you're invited. We'll wind back the clock 60 years to the very first Australian Grand Prix, raced on the dusty roads of Victoria's Phillip Island. And we'll take you to the tarmac here in Adelaide with our own Mark Warren and Darryl Eastlake in today's big celebrity race. Heaps happening here on Nine's Wide World of Sports in the next 7 scintillating hours. So sit back and enjoy the ride of your life as we bring you the 1988 Australian Grand Prix thundering into your living room. Good morning and welcome to the 1988 Australian Formula One Grand Prix. Great to have you aboard for what should be a tremendous day's motor racing. And it's my pleasure once again to welcome the legend of the sport, the one and only Jackie Stewart. What a great day we've got.
Well, it's absolutely perfect. Looking out behind here, there's a little cloud cover which is keeping the hot sun away from the cars and the drivers. From that point of view, it's a little more comfortable than it was yesterday in qualifying. I think we're just going to see a very exciting days of motorsport here. It's terrific. The atmosphere is electric.
Okay, you know when Aryton Senna effectively wrapped up this year's World Championship with that stunning victory 2 weeks ago in the Japanese Grand Prix, there were those who thought that much of the interest in this Australian Grand Prix had been lost. But we don't agree, and you certainly don't.
No, I certainly don't. I think a lot of people in Australia were a little disappointed that that championship was finished in Japan rather than coming here to Australia, and they were expecting a little slow race down here. I certainly don't agree, and I think a lot of other people don't. Let's hear what they have to say.
You might think that today's Australian Grand Prix is going to be dull, but here are 5 reasons why it is not. But first of all, Alain Prost will be very determined to beat Ayrton Senna in the last Grand Prix of the year, and Senna will be anxious to prove that he's top dog. Nigel Mansell is driving for Williams for the last time. He will want to win in a 3.5-litre car, and he might just do it. Gerhard Berger won last year. He's only starting 4th. But he will be anxious to prove that he is a top man. And last of all, Nelson Piquet is the reigning world champion. He has not done at all well this season, but he's high up on the grid in Australia in comparison with recent races. And in 5th place, he will be anxious to prove that he can get ahead. So 5 good reasons, and there are a lot more besides.
Drivers in today's race won't be trying as hard as they did in the previous races. Well, there's an old adage in motorsport that you are only as good as your last race, and today is the last race of the season. And anybody that was fortunate enough to see the qualification rounds will know that there's a lot of drivers out there wanting to leave a good last impression.
You might think this isn't going to be a dramatic end of the season with the World Drivers' Championship finished, but it's the end of the turbocharged era, and of course Adelaide is a very tight circuit where the normally aspirated engines will work very, very well. So it's going to be very, very competitive between these types of cars. And of course it's the end of the season, the last race of the year, where everyone wants to really show and put on a very, very good performance for, again, the team managers and to be prepared for the next season. So I think it's going to be a tough and a very, very exciting race.
You might think that today's Australian Grand Prix, with the World Championship over, could turn out as a bit of a non-event. But there are 26 drivers out there who have all got their own good reasons for operating at 110%. And the most well-known reason for that, of course, is the fact that you're only as good as your last performance, and there's 5 months for the public and the sponsors and everybody to dwell on today's performance, and normally they only get 2 weeks between. So believe me, although it's end of term, it's definitely everybody racing hard.
You may think today's race is going to not set the world alight, but I really disagree with that, because even though Senna's already won the World Championship and Prost is 2nd, I think there's a lot of people with a lot to prove. For example, Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari, it's his last drive for Ferrari, and he hasn't as yet got a drive for next year. So he's going to be all out to really impress the other teams. And as far as Berger's concerned, he's been going really well in practice and was a little annoyed that he didn't go any quicker. So my money's on Berger for this afternoon.
Well, I agree with everything that's been said by those experts, and there really are experts, the other thing is that, of course, the afterplay to this Grand Prix is far greater than any other race, because during a season, it's normally only 2 weeks before the next event. Here in Australia, it's the last of the year, the last of the season, and it's discussed over and over again who did what and where they did it. So therefore, Adelaide, from that point of view, is going to get a lot of interest played afterwards. The other thing is, to win any Grand Prix is a big challenge to all of those drivers, and there aren't all that many of them out there who have actually won a Grand Prix. So you can be sure you're about to see probably as good a Grand Prix as you're ever likely to see, because the heat is off. In other words, they're going right to it, Ken.
OK, Jackie, right now on the track, the open wheelers and the Formula 2 race are hard at it, and heaps of interest as usual in this event. Capturing plenty of attention, for example, will be the clash of this year's Formula 2 Gold Star Series winner, Rowan Onslow, in car number 1, and the champion who went through their paces were Murray Walker and James Hunt, and Jackie Stewart.
Sunday morning, 9:30, and this is the start of what is in many ways the most significant practice period of all. It is only for 30 minutes, but for the first time since the cars came out onto the Adelaide track on Friday morning, they are going to be in race trim. Up to now, in the 1.5-hour sessions on Friday and Saturday morning, we have not known what boost the turbo cars were running. We didn't know what petrol load any of the cars had. We didn't know whether they were absolutely in their race trim. But now, just for 30 minutes, we're going to see the turbo cars using the boost that they will be using during the race. The atmospheric cars will be in a similar state as far as race condition is concerned, and they are on a level pegging basis. And as a result of that, you very often see the 3.5-litre cars much closer to the turbo cars in terms of times. Gerhard Berger is standing on it at the moment, 1:26.4. Now that is actually 9 seconds outside his pole position lap, but remember that the pole position lap was almost certainly with a higher turbocharger boost than he will have in the race, and it was of course a maximum 1-lap effort, whereas in the race you certainly do not drive for 10/10 the whole time. But at the moment Gerhard Berger is fastest, and interestingly his teammate Michele Alboreto, as Berger stops on the circuit for what he's just practicing a start, I think, Jackie.
Well, it's much better for him to practice that start here at 9:35 in the morning rather than on the warm-up lap for this Grand Prix, because if something were to break in his drivetrain, clearly there would be time for it to be repaired before the race, and the clutch itself never wants to be heated up. So he was checking with the humidity, with the air temperature, etc., what revs he would have to take it off the line at, and for a racing driver that's always a delicate moment, because if he fouls it up, he is going to be left behind by the complete field as they pass him, and sometimes that, a false beginning for the race, can create chain reaction and a massive accident, as we've seen on many other Grand Prix over the years when restarts have had to occur simply because one driver has either engaged the wrong gear, has stalled the engine, or has got away to a particularly slow start.
I was talking to a man this morning, Jackie, who has put $100,000 on Nigel Mansell.
I spoke to him as well. I think he's a very nervous man. I think he was standing at our hotel, Murray, saying, what does Murray Walker think? What does Jackie Stewart think?
That's exactly what he did. He came up to me and said, what do you think? Well, now, I've been saying watch Capelli for this race, and I am heartened at the moment. Not that I've put $100,000 on him. I'm heartened by the fact that he is heading the list. He's moved up to the top of the timing list as Nigel Mansell rounds the right-hander on his way to Foster's hairpin, and Mansell's only just gone out onto the track. He hasn't yet put up a time. And there are the first three. Berger, who is third fastest, Senna there, who is fastest, and Prost, who is second.
And I guess yes, they're testing each other here. I'm sure Berger did not want to let him pass there. I'm sure he was testing the speed. Now he's pulled back and let the two of them go through. It'll be interesting to see whether he holds with them, just to see how fast the opposition is. And this would be the only time during this whole weekend here in Adelaide where this kind of manoeuvre would be fair game. So both McLarens, you're looking at the first three fastest runners this morning so far in the warm-up, and the McLarens have accelerated away a slight bit already from Berger, and believe me, the chances are that all three of these drivers are trying to their full extent. This is like the race for them. This is like testing the temperature of the water.
We now have less than 2 minutes to go. Senna is again fastest, Prost is second, and Boutsen is third.
Ayrton Senna winding his way around here, really getting into the groove of this Adelaide racetrack in preparation for what he would love to do this afternoon, would be to win this final Grand Prix of the World Championship year that he has already clinched as champion-elect, this prestigious award that he's really fought for the last 2 years. It's something that Senna, and look, you saw him looking in his mirror there, he cocks his head to the side, looking at rear view mirrors that are probably smaller than if you were to put 3 fingers of your hand together. The mirror is no bigger than that, and they are looking at the opportunity of seeing who's behind them. Now consider the vibration and everything else there, and you'll see how difficult it is and how sharp the reactions they're going to have. Now we're going to see a replay of the pass that was taken on the main straight. Now watch for this. On Senna's, look, you see that hand darting out there from the cockpit? And watch, there is Prost passing. So Senna had made up his mind that he wanted Prost to pass. He signalled Prost, and the sharpness of eye that racing drivers have to take in with all of their vision is a small movement of literally a finger to tell them, with everything else that's going on, pass me now.
And I don't think Gerhard Berger would be seeing too many fingers popping out from the side of Senna's car. And the checkered flag, wielded by Glenn Dix, is out. There is Glenn. And Alain Prost has finished this final half hour of practice as the fastest man on the track. Half a second faster than Ayrton Senna, which is a lot in racing terms. Thierry Boutsen is 4/5 of a second slower than Senna, but 9/10 of a second slower than Prost. 3 turbo cars, 3 normally aspirated 3.5-metre cars in the top 6, and this says to me that the Australian Grand Prix is going to be really exciting.
And these are the front runners. These are the people who occupy the top 12 grid positions. Ayrton Senna, number 1. Alain Prost, 2. Nigel Mansell, Gerhard Berger, Nelson Piquet, Riccardo Patrese, Derek Warwick, Nannini, Capelli, Boutsen, Cappy, and Alboreto, 12th off the grid. Well, that was half hour of practice this morning. What does that do to the drivers, Jackie?
Well, I think I don't care how many miles you've had in a racing car. The morning of a Grand Prix, you're waking up far too sharp. You're waking up nervous, and suddenly you got these butterflies, and you're over tense. I don't care how many World Championships you've won, you still feel like that. It's a big day ahead of you, it's a dangerous day ahead of you, and you'll be nervous. That warm-up, apart from finding out all that Murray Walker said about the cars, it's also a question of finding yourself, calming yourself down, getting rid of those butterflies by flipping the visor down and getting to the job on hand. So it's allowed those drivers to get that morning excitement out of their body, and now they're going to attack today as a work day.
Jackie, you pointed out beautifully that Prost-Senna teamwork in the passing movement, and the finger goes up.
Yeah.
Now, do the signals vary from team to team, or is there a standard signals that Formula One drivers use between one another?
No, there's an understanding. Your right hand, if you want them to pass in your right, your left hand, of course, if you're going to let them go through in your left. But can you imagine at 180 miles an hour going down Brabham Straight as they were, with the airfoils and the wings at the back and all of the exhaust smoke coming out, and you see that little finger just pointing out? I think it gives you an idea of the perception, of the reactions, of the eye-hand coordination, and just of the peripheral feelings that a driver has when his adrenaline's pumping and he's able to do it. In motor racing, it is quite an extraordinary thing to be able to notice such a small move, because in the tiny cockpit it's literally a finger that I pointed out there. I was waiting for it, but the people who are watching this show now probably wouldn't have expected something as small as that to make such a difference, and Prost knew exactly what he was to do.
And Jackie, there is no mistaking what the fist in the air means.
No, that's been demonstrated this weekend as well.
OK, you're on Nine's Wide World of Sports. We'll be back in a flash. And there's not much that hasn't been said already about this year's world champion-elect Ayrton Senna. And yesterday, the Brazilian lived up to his high-speed reputation by qualifying on pole position for the big race, his 13th pole for this 16-race season. And what a season it's been, as Tim Wharton reports.
And Ayrton Senna, who Jackie Stewart said earlier today is still probably at least 2 years off his peak, is still a darn sight better than most of the people here today, and I think it is going to show.
In 1985, Australian motor racing fans got their first close-up glimpse of Ayrton Senna. At that stage, only 25 years old, and in only his second year of Formula One racing. Even then, you could tell the young Brazilian was a champion of the future as he blitzed the Adelaide circuit.
And this is sensational.
That year, Senna had already notched up his first victory with a win in Portugal, followed by another in Belgium. The following year, he started to show his liking for street circuits, with a victory in Detroit as well as winning in Spain. In 1987, Senna won again at Detroit and also at Monaco, another street circuit. Each year, he was getting faster. After a change from Lotus to McLaren, Senna lined up at his home track, determined to win the first race of the 1988 season. But mechanical problems delayed his charge.
Ayrton Senna waving his arms. Now, does that mean that the Brazilian has stalled? Yes, indeed, it must.
Finally underway in the spare McLaren, he fought his way up to second behind Prost, when officials suddenly ruled that Senna had contravened the rules by starting in the second car.
Senna, that's number 12. Senna is being shown the black flag.
It was the second successive time that Senna had been disqualified. He'd lost his second placing at Adelaide in 1987, and so at San Marino, the young Brazilian left nothing to chance, notching up the first of his 8 wins this year.
Ayrton Senna wins for McLaren Honda from Alain Prost.
But then at Monaco, a street circuit which Senna usually dominates, he failed again, smashing into a wall with just over 10 laps remaining, while he was leading.
And that is Senna. Sensation. On lap 67, Ayrton Senna goes out of the lead of the Monaco Grand Prix at the Portier.
Coming up to the 8th race of the season, the British Grand Prix, Senna had won 3 races to Prost's 4. And it was here at Silverstone that he produced one of his best drives, beating the opposition and the elements.
So here we are, here is Ayrton Senna coming up behind Gerhard Berger and about to lap Alain Prost. Senna passes Berger, tucks in front of the Ferrari. They both pull out to take Alain Prost and lap him.
The next race at Hockenheim, West Germany, saw Senna again dominate on a wet track.
And away they go, a good start by Alboreto Berger, who goes into second place. Berger is now right up behind Ayrton Senna, and Nannini has gone into third place as they go up the straight. It is Ayrton Senna leading.
At Hungary, it was a dry track, and here Senna had to fight hard to beat his rival Prost.
The two McLarens are very, very close indeed.
This is a chance for Prost. If he can punch that boost button, Senna no doubt will be on maximum power. Prost's in his toe though, and this is definitely a chance for Prost to take the lead. He's going up the inside, Senna's forcing, and Alain Prost takes the lead, and Senna's got it back again. Senna forced him to go in too quickly. Tremendous stuff between the two McLaren drivers.
That was 3 victories in a row for Senna. And in Belgium, the Brazilian, for the first time this season, edged ahead in the World Drivers' Championship, after again outmanoeuvring Prost.
Prost looks across his shoulder and sees Ayrton Senna on the inside, taking the lead.
The Italian Grand Prix at Monza looks set to be yet another repeat of the Senna sensation, when, with victory in his sights, his impatience with a slower driver got too much.
Senna! Ayrton Senna spins! And into the lead goes Berger, into second place goes Alboreto. What a fantastic situation!
Here we see again what happened to Ayrton Senna. Well, we see for the first time. Car in front of him locking the brakes, and he definitely got in a tangle, and that was Schlesser, I think.
Yes, it was Jean-Louis Schlesser, and there will be no thanks from Ayrton Senna for that.
Prost won the next 2 races to give him the lead for the championship. And then came Japan, an opportunity for Senna to wrap up the title. And after so many great starts from his record 12 pole positions this season, everyone expected Senna to burst out of the blocks again.
Now it's got to be going, less than 7 seconds, and it is. Senna gets away. Prost, fantastic. Senna left on the grid, and they go flying past him. And this has given Prost an enormous advantage. Berger second, Capelli third, and it looks like Warwick up into 4th position at the arrows, and Senna has really got himself a problem now.
For the first time this season, the Brazilian had missed the start, but determined, Senna gradually reeled in his opponents, until only Prost was left.
And this is a serious problem moment potentially for Alain Prost. He's going to have to punch that boost button. Senna is getting close to him, and Senna is going to challenge for the lead. So Prost will have to go up the inside of Senna. Ayrton Senna has got the lead. And that was exactly as we predicted as a possible situation. The traffic definitely held Alain Prost up, and Prost will be pretty upset.
That was the end of Prost's World Championship hopes, and Senna went on to claim his first World Championship.
Ayrton Senna crosses the line, and you can see his exultation. He knows he is the world champion of 1987.
So a great achievement. Ayrton Senna, the new world champion.
It was Senna's 8th and most important victory. Not only had he won the title, but he'd also set a record with the most amount of victories in one season. Ayrton Senna undoubtedly deserves his crown.
Jackie, we know we all can get lost in statistics, but McLaren team this year, 1st and 2nd on 9 occasions. It's a 16-race season.
And also winning the Constructors' World Championship, also a tremendous achievement. There are those who say that McLaren and Honda have spoiled this year's Grand Prix racing. I would disagree with that, Ken. What they have shown is tremendous ability, teamwork more than anything else, and just a great challenge to everyone else to beat. So I take my hat off to them, because not only has Ayrton Senna proved himself to be such a wonderful driver, but that team down there, and there are 50 people in that team down here to come to Adelaide to look after them, have just shown themselves as being the most efficient unit in Grand Prix racing.
And something that everybody else has got to aspire to if they want to get into business.
Exactly. They've set the benchmark.
Okay. Well, right now, trackside, one of the fascinating aspects of every race day on the World Grand Prix circuit is taking place inside the briefing room. It's one of the few places on the track that we can't get into with a camera. It's the pre-race briefing for all the drivers, and I guess you would know better than anybody, Jackie, what exactly goes on in that room.
Well, I must say, from my personal experience, most of it is baloney. Really, the kind of chat that goes on here, we get a different man at each racetrack around the world trying to tell all of these Grand Prix drivers the do's and the don'ts, how they must start the race, how not to have a crash in the first corner, and how to behave like gentlemen. And frankly, everybody's sitting there scratching themselves and sometimes even picking their nose as a distraction to what's going on. So really, I don't think you expect to hear anything sensational coming up unless there has been a small change in the regulations.
Obviously very impressed. All right, with all the latest scuttlebutt from pit lane, it's a very good morning now to Australia's own Formula One champion, Alan Jones.
Morning, Ken. Morning, Jackie. Well, I'm down here on the pit lane. This morning's warm-up was fairly uneventful. Alain Prost was quickest, Senna second quickest, Boutsen third quickest, so that could be somebody to look out for during the race. Jonathan Palmer was unfortunate enough to crash. He's wrecked his race car, so they're preparing the spare car for him to start in. As you said, Ken, they're just about to start the drivers' briefing. I'm hoping it's not going to be quite as long as last year's. I felt they kept them in that bus for far too long, and I think that Jackie will well know that if they're there for too long, they get bored and only half hear what was being said to them anyway. The only good thing about briefings is, admittedly, they do repeat themselves all over the world, but each particular circuit might have an idiosyncrasy which the drivers have got to be told about. But I'll hang around down here, see if I can find out if there was anything interesting to be said into the drivers' briefing, and get back to you. Back to you, Ken.
Alan, just while you're there, what did you do during those drivers' briefings?
Well, I always used to try and sit up the back and pick somewhere comfortable so I could relax and just have a drink of my drink before the Grand Prix.
It wasn't a beer, was it, Alan?
Unfortunately, no. I'm making up for it now, though.
OK, thanks, Alan. We'll check in again with all a little later on. You're watching Nine's Wide World of Sports. And it's a hearty good morning right now to the voice of Formula One, Murray Walker. Good morning, Murray.
Okay.
You got some gems for us this afternoon?
I hope so. I think it's going to be an absolutely terrific race. I've been saying consistently since I came here that this could be, and almost certainly will be, the best race of the year, and I'm sticking to it.
It's been impressive, the practice and qualifying sessions. It's been hell-bent for leather, hasn't it?
Well, there has literally not been a couple of practice sessions like Fridays and Saturdays anywhere else this season where the lead has changed on the timing list right at the very end, and it was great stuff yesterday.
Well, we look forward to having you with us, Murray. You know, like everything else in life, Grand Prix racing has its extremes, and when you consider the amount of money that's needed to keep the teams racing, it's definitely better to be at the top of the pile.
Look at this. You wouldn't think from the relaxed way these Grand Prix cars are being moved around at Adelaide Airport that on average they're worth some $15 million each. And that's an awful lot of money to have dangling from a strap. $15 million each? Well, yes. Think of the chassis, the engines, the research and development, the factory, the transport, the people, and everything else it took to get them here. That's real money. And it's not difficult to pick the rich teams when they hit town. They're the ones with the expensive matching outfits.
Yeah, just bring it around to the front.
This is the McLaren team, a frighteningly efficient operation with an enormous budget. But then there's the Osella team, who have difficulty scraping together enough lira each year just to keep themselves going. And this contrast is never more obvious when you see their operations in the pits.
As far as money's concerned, all I can really say to you is to operate a team on our scale, excluding what deal one would have with an engine supplier or a partnership with an engine supplier. You need to be operating in the region of $25 million per annum. I think if you look at the facility first, we are based in Woking in southern England. We have a facility of nearly 68,000 square feet. And in fact, when we're all back there, we're now at a staff level of 154 people. So it's a fairly significant team in size.
McLaren have the best of everything, the best chassis, the best engines, the best drivers. But down that end of the pit lane, things are very different. This is the poor relations end. Coloni, Real, Eurobrun. You see, it's all to do with money. If you've got the dollars, you can be successful. If you're successful, you get the sponsors. And that is the problem of the little under-financed Osella team.
We are, for 1 year, is my team have only 20 people at our work about this.
And how much is your budget? How much money for each year?
I think it's about $4 million Australian dollars.
Well, that was the scene earlier this week. Now things have really changed for Osella. They've got even worse. They've come all the way from Italy to Australia, 12,000 miles, and they haven't even pre-qualified. They're not taking part in the official qualification runs.
their mechanics are packing up their tools, people are back at the hotel, and tomorrow they will be going home having achieved nothing.
Oh dear, why do they do it? Why do they punish themselves? I mean, how can you compete at that level with people like McLaren, Williams and Ferrari who've got millions and millions, Murray?
It's called enthusiasm, Ken, and if you're an Italian enthusiast, you are a hyper-enthusiast, and they will do anything in order to be in Formula One.
So they believe in dreams?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And Sella have kept their dream alive for a long, long time. Every year we wonder how on earth they're going to be able to do it again. Next year they're going to have 2 cars.
How's the voice? You right for this afternoon?
Yes, I'm in good trim. I've been doing my gargling round the back, you know.
Murray, you're talking about enthusiasm and dreams. To work with you, you are the most enthusiastic commentator I know. You're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, you're like a young apprentice. You're standing up there, punching the air, pointing to the television set and the monitor. You're like a young thing. You're not actually a young thing. I want the Australian people to know, how old is Murray Walker?
Oh, Jackie.
I want to know.
Murray Walker is 65. He was born in 1923.
Fantastic. Listen, Murray, with the enthusiasm, the spirit that you have, I dip my hat.
Oh, you're making me feel very embarrassed now, Jackie.
You're the best.
And I tell you what, you are a joy to watch. It's almost like watching a rap dancer dancing around a monitor with a microphone to his mouth. You are magic. And we look forward to the call this afternoon.
Thank you.
OK, don't you dare move from that armchair. We'll be back with more in just a minute. Qualified third on the grid, this afternoon's Grand Prix will be his last drive for the Williams team. Next season, he'll be behind the wheel of a Ferrari. Quite a change for this very talented racer, but one he's looking forward to. Barry Sheen reports.
I think it would be unrealistic for anyone not to admit that I think it's everybody's dream one day in their career to drive for the great Ferrari team, and you know, from that point of view, I'm tremendously excited. Putting that aside, Ferrari is another Formula One team that we have to do a job to compete, and I just hope that we can have a little bit of a fairy tale there and start winning back with Ferrari.
The Ferrari isn't that competitive at the moment. Do you know anything about next year's engines?
No, I can't comment at all really about next year's Ferrari car or engine. The only thing I will say is that they're an incredible professional outfit. Their name is synonymous to Formula One, and I believe that with Gerhard and myself driving for them, they've got to stand the best chance, and we have got to stand the best chance of having the machinery given to us, because Ferrari are not there to make the numbers up, Ferrari are there to win.
A lot of people think from the outside that the motor racing driver's life is really wonderful, but don't you miss Roseanne and the kids?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, my son the other day said to Roseanne, I said, Mummy, what does Daddy look like? I've forgotten what Daddy looks like. And she said, well, you see the milkman going down the road? No, she didn't. But it's very difficult. I spoke to my son on the phone this morning before coming to the circuit, and then obviously spoke to my wife after, and she said, well, I couldn't see him on the other end of the phone, but he was smiling and nodding his head and everything, and he was very happy, because we had a few problems last week. When I go away for a period of time, all of a sudden he'll stop eating because he wants me, and it's the way that children just show their discomfort, shall we say. But you know, they're great, and my daughter, who's the oldest one, she understands a little bit more, but fortunately, as you'll understand, children have no time scale. If you say you're going to be back in a week, they're not really sure how long a week is, so you just keep telling them, oh, they'll be back in a few days. But it is difficult.
Yeah, I've read in the press that when you retire from motor racing, you want to become a professional golfer. Is that right?
Yeah, I elaborate on that and say when I finish with motor racing, what I do is have a 1 or 2 year sabbatical and play golf basically every day, and sort of start putting the training and work in that you have to be a professional golfer, which is i.e. hitting balls 6 to 8 hours a day, which people forget, 7 days a week. And that's the difference between being an amateur and a professional. And give yourself a chance, and if I gave myself 1 or 2 years to do that, I know quite confidently I could say, no, there's no problem getting down to scratch, but to be a great golfer, you've got to be 4 to 6 below par every game, really. But I'd just like to give myself the opportunity to at least try.
Well, Nigel, you're a great motor racer, so let's hope you get a hole in one today.
Well, I'll go for winning the race. Thanks.
Well done, Barry Sheen, and good luck to Nigel Mansell. He's really one of the nice guys, and of course we all remember '86, and if there's one guy who really deserves a bit of good luck, I guess it's Nigel today. Okay, this is the Grand Prix race day in the city of churches. We'll be back in just a moment. There are few more traumatic sporting occupations than that of the Formula One racing driver. Certainly, there are few more unpredictable and hazardous environments than a Formula One track. A driver is a test pilot risking life and limb strapped into a projectile driven by some of the most powerful machinery in sports. Patrick Lindsay reports.
Every Formula One driver knows that at any moment, often through no fault of his own, either because of another driver's mistake or through mechanical failure, he may lose control of his vehicle, with the obvious risks to life and limb. Clearly, the stress levels faced by these men are enough to send most of us to the funny farm.
I feel sometimes after a Grand Prix that I've been kicked every way but, loose. It's just amazing that the amount of effort that you have to put in during qualifying to do interviews with you guys, sponsors' evenings, all that is strain that gradually builds up through the year, and I'm getting no younger. This is my 100th Grand Prix, so been around a little bit.
With his vast experience, Derek Warwick is an ideal subject for us to study some of the stress levels with which Formula One drivers must contend. Derek is 34 years old and in his 8th year of Formula One. Here, nurse Michelle Greenfield fits him with a Holter monitor, which will record his heart rate during a qualifying session.
I mean, 30 years I've been growing these hairs and she's rubbing them off. Well, I wouldn't call myself an athlete, but yes, I do a fair bit of training. I enjoy training. I enjoy running and playing squash and all those sort of things that you do to try and keep fit. Did you, were you any good at wallpapering or not?
Despite his modesty, Derek's normal resting heart rate is an extremely low 42 beats a minute, well below that of the average person, which is between 60 and 70, more like a top-flight athlete. He feels relaxed driving because he's so familiar with the surroundings.
It's a funny thing. I played in the Pro-Am on Tuesday, and I'm not a very confident golfer. I've only been playing the game for 2 years. And when I walked out onto that first tee, my heart was beating like a drum. And yet here I am just about to start practice or qualifying, and I've got a heartbeat of 55. It's crazy. I think it's just, something you're used to. It's something I have confidence in my ability, and yet out there on the golf course, I haven't got confidence.
Here's what our study of Derek's stress levels revealed. Before he gets into the car, his heightened anticipation has brought his rate up to about that of the normal resting pulse.
There's a very sophisticated method now, obviously, of testing all those sorts of things. Do you actually do that? Do you sort of monitor your own health that way?
Yes, we do. I've got some people in Jersey, the Channel Islands, where I come from, and they monitor me every other week, in fact. And I do a lot of training to try and keep that down at a nice level pattern.
Once out on the track, Derek's aim is to get the feel of the circuit and to set up his car for qualifying. But an unforeseen mechanical glitch disturbs his equilibrium. By the time he hits out for a fast lap, he's concentrating fiercely.
There is Derek Warwick, really going for a time as I talk to you.
Forced back into the pits again, the stress levels remain high.
And Derek Warwick's coming back into the pits. He looks like he's got trouble. Yep, coming into the pits. He's had a lot of trouble all day with this car number 17, the USF&G Aero, and he's getting out the car. Yep, not a happy man. No, he's not at all pleased.
With time running out, Derek's heart rate peaks when he goes all out.
Just 2 minutes to go, and it looks as though Derek Warwick's finally got his Aeros number 17 working. He's off on a flyer.
We monitor people quite regularly, and they can get to maximal heart rates under periods of tension, such as anger, or with extreme exertion, but they usually last at those levels for only a short time. This man is expected to last at those levels throughout the race.
During the heat of a race, Derek and his fellow drivers' heart rates will constantly hover between 170 and 190 beats a minute. Performances which place them in the same class as Robert De Castella.
The stresses and strains facing a Formula One driver extend far beyond the physical. The mental and emotional stresses are constant and extensive.
I think if you were to look at when Alain Prost arrived in Grand Prix motor racing, you take a picture of him and then see the picture you see today. You see an old man today, and he's only been in there for 5 or 6 years. The pressure in Grand Prix racing, because of the competitiveness, because of the physical efforts, because of the need constantly to be competitive, within his own team, trying to motivate everybody, trying to succeed. Now, that is a lot of pressure. And then you've got the nervous energy, you've got the element of danger, you've got the recovery from accidents. All of those things don't happen in many sports.
So maybe after all, the Formula One drivers really do earn the millions of dollars they're paid to risk their lives and to grow old prematurely. Derek Warwick sure earned his money in the service of medical science.
But don't call me, I'll call you.
He's not very brave when it comes to bandages. He's much better in Formula One. But it was interesting to see that his heartbeat while he was in the car, waiting to go out, was up. As soon as the car rolled out, it went down. You know, it's a fascinating thing, isn't it?
Well, first of all, when he was waiting to go out, the anticipation, the pulse rate does go up. Then you get into your own environment at slow speeds, and it feels good. The moment, however, when you really get onto a quick one, and this course doesn't have many very, very fast corners. I was pulse rate checked in Austria, where we had a couple of very quick ones. My pulse rate peaked out at 200 every single lap on the one corner. And they took 3 of us, 3 drivers, on the same weekend, and we all did the same. Now, a lot of doctors would tell you if you get to 200, your heart's going to explode.
Sure.
It's very high, very dangerous potentially, but we do it on a regular basis. So that's why running, exercising and keeping fit is so important. A lot of people think that racing drivers are not athletes. They sit in their cars. Yeah. They can't be athletes. They're not like track and field athletes. But in fact, it's not true at all. The isometrics of staying in a racing car, the muscular tension, a racing driver is very well developed physically, certainly from the waist up to about here, and then it fades a little bit.
You're talking about the aging process that stress has. How did you fare? How did you fare?
I think I actually look more relaxed now, 15 years after my racing career finished, than when I was really at the sharp end of it, say 1971, 72, 73. In 71, I had mononucleosis because of the strain and the pressures. In 1972, I had a duodenal ulcer that hemorrhaged. And in 1973, I had a doctor traveling with me all the time and a trainer traveling with me all the time. Something that since has been taken up with many of the Grand Prix drivers who even bring them here to Adelaide as dietitians to give them the right food prior to the race so that their energy level is positive.
Who would be, in your opinion, one of the fitter drivers down there? Who was really into the fitness thing, or was it all very, very much the same?
They're pretty much the same. There's the odd one that might be carrying a little bit too much weight, but very few indeed. They're all very strong and very fit.
All right, okay, a little over an hour to go before the 1988 Grand Prix. Let's get to the green light, and we're counting down, so don't go away.
Team they would have wanted to go to after that. It wasn't to say he was doing a bad job. He was putting the cars on pole position and winning Grand Prix. To do something, that chicane incident at Monza might rear its ugly head, I'm sure.
What, you're saying that Honda will give him the shaft?
Well, I'm not saying that in as many words. I'm saying they've got a very good memory.
Eccleston sees it differently. It's all about doing good business, and Honda simply do it better than anyone else, according to his rule book.
They know they have an objective. They've come in and they've done exactly what they want to do, which is good. I'm sorry that a few other people don't do the same sort of job.
So you respect them totally?
Absolutely, 100%. No complaints.
The story of Honda and how they go about business, and I must apologise, there was a slight technical hitch there in the middle of that story, but I'm sure you got the gist of just what Honda will do to get in front and be winners, and they're certainly very successful at that. You know, there's not too long to go in this Grand Prix. We have just a few minutes to go. It will be the race of a lifetime. It is a magic feeling down there on the grid. There is the McLaren team. They have their cars fenced off, obviously being so successful. Everybody wants to get a shot of them, so they're the only team that has a fence or a little bit of a barrier around them. The rest are allowed to wander around rather freely. Okay, we'll be back in just a moment with the big one, the Grand Prix for 1988.
And we've got
It's been action, action, action already here at Adelaide. There have been incidents all round the circuit. Time and time again, we've seen cars spinning off. We've seen drivers in trouble. Nelson Piquet started the ball rolling, the world champion, spinning off in his Lotus. As he got away, he spun the car back into action, and along came Philippe Streff, straight into the barriers. Then it was Pierluigi Martini, the little Italian. He gets his Minardi going again. Philippe Alliot arrives, jumps the curbs onto the gravel. And then, with him thinking about it, Michele Alboreto does exactly the same thing. Misjudges the corner, goes straight into the gravel. Then it was Eddie Cheever's turn. With flames pouring from the turbo at the back of the car, he motored serenely onwards, laying a trail of oil all round the circuit. Not at all popular. Pier Carlo Ginzani was the man we were watching next. Look at that turbo cloud of smoke pouring out of the back of the Zach Speed. It's Martini again! He's done it a second time, not once but twice. Pierluigi Martini rejoins the circuit. But this was pure poetry. Ayrton Senna putting up the fastest lap of the day to get pole position. Beautiful driving, 1 minute 17.748, and he did it as the checkered flag came out, and he knew that his teammate Alain Prost would not be able to do anything about it. And so, for the 13th time, this brilliant Brazilian, was starting from pole position on the grid. The top man of 1988, won more races than anybody else, world champion as the result of it, and more pole positions than anyone else. 13 pole positions in one season, and a record only beaten by Jim Clark, the great driver of the past, of 29 pole positions. And now, in pole position then is Ayrton Senna. Next to him, his teammate Alain Prost. In third position on the grid is Nigel Mansell, the leading 3.5-litre engine driver in the Williams. Gerhard Berger, last year's winner in the Ferrari, is in fourth place on the grid this year. The reigning world champion Nelson Piquet in the Lotus Honda is fifth. Riccardo Patrese, Nigel Mansell's teammate, is sixth. Derek Warwick, the Englishman in the turbocharged Arrows, is seventh on the grid, ahead of Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton. In ninth place, it is Ivan Capelli in the March. Boutsen is 10th, well down for him. Alex Caffey, the little Italian, has brilliantly put the Dallara into 11th place, ahead of his countryman Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari. 13th, the Japanese driver, Satoru Nakajima. 14th is Martini, who spun off in practice. Let's hope he doesn't do it in the race. Andrea De Cesaris is 15th. Streff is 16th. Jonathan Palmer, who had a big off in this morning's half-hour practice, is in 17th place. Chiva is 18th. Maurizio Gugelmin from Brazil in the March is 19th. And Stefano Modena, who made his Grand Prix debut here in Australia last year, is 20th. Sala, the Spaniard, in the Minardi is 20th. First, Stefan Johansson, the Swedish driver in the Ligier, is 22nd. His teammate, René Arnoux, is 23rd. Philippe Alliot from France, who also went off in practice, is 24th. And there is the magnificent Adelaide street circuit. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, like it in the world. It beats Monaco, it beats Detroit. It's fast, it's spectacular, but more than that, it is tremendously demanding. This race is going to be one of the longest of the season. Only Monaco and Detroit and Hungary get near it in terms of time. And now, round we go with Satoru Nakajima, the Japanese driver. This is the section where he goes into the S's after the straight. And as he accelerates away, he is coming up to the right-hander at Wakefield Turn. That's a second gear, 70-mile-an-hour corner. Then up to the second gear, East Terrace Bend, which he's approaching at this very moment. Now on to Flinders, third gear, stays in third gear, now goes up into fourth gear, 120 miles an hour. Now he's at Market's Turn, on his way to Stag Turn with the famous pub on the left. Now down Rundle Road towards Brewery Bend, round Brewery Bend. This is the fastest part of the course. The Brabham Straight building up to 180 miles an hour in sixth gear before standing on everything for racetrack hairpin, second gear, 70 kilometers an hour. Now the sweeping Left-handed paddock turn. The numbers, incidentally, are camera position numbers that you see on your screen. And now coming down to Foster's hairpin, second gear. See Nakajima's hand as he goes down through the gears, and now he has the pit straight in front of him and back into the S's again. So you've just done a flying lap in the Lotus Honda with the Japanese driver Satoru Nakajima, and you look at the grid. Ayrton Senna, well, is he going to make it his 9th Grand Prix victory of the season? Well, this year, I have absolutely no doubt that the Australian Grand Prix will be even better than it has been in the past, because there is no pressure on these drivers. Senna doesn't have the pressure of the World Championship. He is World Champion. And with us, we have, of course, another McLaren World Champion of the past, James Hunt.
And certainly we had a fantastic battle in qualifying between the two McLaren drivers, with Prost and Senna fighting it out. The pole position was changing lap by lap through Friday's qualifying. Prost came out just on top by pipping Senna on the last lap, but Senna had gone quicker than him 1 lap earlier, and we reversed the situation yesterday. And with any luck, the race is set up for a big battle between the two McLaren drivers. Ayrton Senna, of course, anxious and really keen to confirm his status as the new world champion and meet teammate Alain Prost today. And Alain Prost obviously wanting to finish the season on a high note. He had a slow start to the season. Senna got away from him in the championship, but he fought back absolutely brilliantly during the second half, made a real battle of it, and certainly went out as handed over the crown, as it were, to Senna in the most dignified and worthy way. We see Arrow's car, and there's the grid, just starting to clear the grid, engines running. They'll set off as they go now. Green flag away for a warm-up lap. This is only a parade lap, remember. Senna, the pole man, will lead the field round, and they use this to warm up their tyres a little bit, and then on the second half of the lap, Senna will slow the field down, let them bunch up, so that when they arrive on the grid with engines running, he doesn't have to sit there too long. He wants the whole field to arrive as near together as possible, so that, of course, remember, these Grand Prix cars don't have any fans for their radiators. They depend on moving for their cooling, so if a car is sitting still with the engine running, the temperatures are climbing. And we've got Eurobrun left on the grid. Stefano Modena has failed to get started. There he is, being pushed down the grid, and so that's a disaster for young Stefano Modena, who made his Formula 1 debut here last year and qualified very well in what's not the world's greatest car. Now, Modena is away. He is not allowed, when he catches the field, to overtake anybody, so he will have to start from the back of the grid. So Senna now slowing the field right down. He wants them all to catch up, as I said, because the water temperature will climb as they sit on the grid for the front runners. Also, they'll have the car already in first gear, and you get a little bit of heating up from the clutch as you sit there. The longer you sit, the more the clutch collects heat, as there's a bit of friction as it's dragging on the flywheel, and that, of course, can be very critical.
In pole position for the 13th time this season, Ayrton Senna leads them round on the grid. As you can see, Alain Prost is next to him on the staggered grid. Third is Nigel Mansell, and fourth Gerhard Berger. In fifth position, it's Nelson Piquet, the reigning world champion. Then in the Williams, Riccardo Patrese. Seventh is Derek Warwick, and eighth is Nannini in the Benetton. In ninth position, Capelli in the March. 10th, Boutsen in the Benetton. 11th is Cappy, and 12th is Alboreto. Then Nakajima and Martini, De Cesaris and Streff. 17th, Jonathan Palmer in the Tyrrell. 18th, Eddie Cheever. Gugelmin is 19th in the March. Modena, who's got away late, is 20th. And there, 23rd, Alio. 24th, Alio. And bringing up the last of the grid, Piercarlo Ghinzani, who has just made it this year. Modena, of course, will have to start from the back, as James has just said. I hope he has the presence of mind to realise that, and that he does not try to filter up to his 20th position I can tell you that he is not trying to do so. I can look across the circuit and I can see the sensible young Italian cruising round at the back. He's lost 6 places on the grid, but in a race as long as this and as demanding as this, I don't think that will be too much of a problem for him at the back. So all set now for this 82-lap, 192-mile Australian Grand Prix, which we expect to be a battle royal between that man, Alain Prost, and on his left, Ayrton Senna. A lovely start by Prost and by Nigel Mansell, who gets up alongside Ayrton Senna. But Prost leads away first. It's Senna second. Up into third position has come Berger. Fourth is Mansell. Fifth is Piquet. Sixth is Patrese. And in seventh place it is Thierry Boutsen. So they go round into the right-hander at Wakefield, up to Flinders, and it is Prost leading, Senna second, Berger third. Look for now Nigel Mansell in the Williams. He is still ahead of Nelson Piquet. Up to Markin's turn, the right-hander, which they're approaching now. Then into Stag turn. They're coming up to the part of the course now where the turbocharged McLaren Hondas will be able to use their superior power and, from their point of view, hopefully pull away. But the Ferrari of Berger is hanging on. Now they are into the Brabham Straight. There is Berger in third position. Coming towards us, Prost and Senna. And Alboreto has gone off the circuit. Alboreto has crashed. There is the Ferrari. Alboreto out on lap 1. Michele Alboreto goes off.
Well, tremendous stuff at the start. Prost just stretching a little bit of a lead over Senna. Berger really charging. Tremendous combative first corner from Berger, because Mansell made a superb start off the second row of the grid. And I was expecting to see him in second place at the first corner. But Berger muscled his way past and is really charging in the Ferrari. He's not really expected to be able to stay with the McLarens throughout the race. Mighty good job of it at the moment. So Prost leads. We have the situation that we were hoping for a good race, with Prost getting a good start. And Prost is really stretching out a little bit of a lead at the moment and looks to be very fired up. Now, action replay of the start of the race. Now you see Mansell bursting through from the second row. He gets alongside Senna. It was Berger heading for the inside for the first corner. Now, back live, Alain Prost trying to get away, trying to build himself a little bit of a cushion. He's absolutely at 11 tenths, and this is really an exciting performance from Prost. He is really throwing the car about, which is not normally his style.
And as you can see, Gerhard Berger is right up with Ayrton Senna at the end of the first lap. Prost led Senna by 2.1 seconds, a lap time of 1 minute 27.56, which is absolutely terrific from a standing start. So now the battle is joined. Gerhard Berger will have a major problem very soon. He's not at all happy about the fuel consumption of the Ferrari. He will have to back off, but meantime he's pressing Senna hard. Piquet goes through in fourth position, and Patrese is right behind him.
I saw a little gesticulation out of the cockpit from Senna as he went past his pit, and Berger was having a look there, and I get the feeling that Senna may have a problem with his car. It looks to me, and the speed with which Alain Prost, you see him going out of shot there, the speed with which Prost is extending his lead also suggests that Senna isn't entirely happy. Berger, as Murray said, is unlikely to be able to sustain this pace. I expect he's using pretty much full boost with his turbo engine at the moment, and that certainly will be getting him a deficit on his fuel. And Berger, look, he's right alongside and he's having a go. Berger is up alongside Senna. Oh dear. Two very experienced drivers, and they nearly tangled. The wheels were actually inside each other at one stage there. Tremendous stuff, but Berger makes it through.
So, Gerhard Berger, last year's winner, has bullied his way past Ayrton Senna on the third lap. And the order is Alain Prost now leading by 3.5 seconds from Gerhard Berger going through in second place. And here's a replay of Berger taking Ayrton Senna. Now watch him stay on the inside there as Senna and they interlock wheels.
Yes, it certainly was a case of bullying, because Senna's not an easy man to bully, and he didn't take that lying down. He was prepared to fight for the corner even though he was on the outside. And look at Berger go. He's a tremendously talented driver, very, very determined, very quick. He's been a bit miserable this season because the Ferrari he feels hasn't given him the vehicle that he needed to do the job consistent with his enormous ability. But he's certainly getting the best out of it now.
Race order, lap 4, Alain Prost leading by 5.5 seconds. The little Frenchman is setting out to demonstrate that he may have lost the World Championship, but he is most certainly going to win the last race of the year, and he certainly will if he goes on like this. He is extending his lead over Ayrton Senna all the time, and Senna, of course, now in third position. Alain Prost, fastest lap so far, 1 minute 24.18. He is the only person below 1 minute 25 so far, and Senna's last lap was done in 1 minute 27. Prost crosses the line. Gerhard Berger, I'm looking down the track for him. There he is going through. 4.8 seconds, so Gerhard Berger has gained a bit. Senna is 2.5 seconds behind Berger. Fourth position, it is Piquet. Now, there is the flying Ferrari. I think that Gerhard Berger has either been sandbagging over his fuel consumption, or he's just going to make an absolutely terrific race out of it by forcing Prost.
Yes, I think that's a Ferrari tactic. They want to have a really good showing here, and I think Berger is just going to say, to hell with the fuel, take the consequences and be damned, and just go for it. And just set the fastest lap of the race. He's actually catching Prost. He's pulling well away from Senna. And Senna's performance at the moment does look to me as if he's got a problem, and that little signal he made to his pit as he went past the lap before last makes me think he may have some sort of minor handling problem.
And you are watching by far the fastest man on the course. The brilliant Gerhard Berger is now really winding things up. He has just gone round in 1 minute 23.08, and that is nearly a full second faster than Alain Prost. The gap is coming down. It was 4.8 seconds last lap. It was 5.5 the lap before. Now we'll see what it is as Prost goes through to complete his fourth lap. And the gap is down to 4.1 seconds. So Berger is catching the Frenchman at the rate of something like 0.7 of a second a lap. Prost leading, Berger second, Senna third. Piquet is still in fourth position as they go streaming through. Patrese fifth, Mansell is sixth, Capelli is seventh, Nannini is eighth, Warwick is ninth, and Cappy is 10th.
Yes, and let's just hope that Berger isn't throwing fuel away, and that he's running it in race trim, because if he is, he's catching Prost, and we could have a real battle on our hands.
Now let's savour this as Alain Prost goes down Brabham Straight, round racetrack hairpin, into paddock turn, which he will be in a moment, because he's approaching the racetrack hairpin now, and you can see the first four in the shot together. Prost, Berger, Senna, Piquet, McLaren, Ferrari, McLaren, Lotus, and Ayrton Senna. There he is driving a better race here already than he has done for a long time. There is Patrese, Mansell, Capelli, Boutsen, Warwick, and Alain Prost coming through to complete the lap. Now, I'll give you the gap. I remind you that it was 4.1 seconds. Prost crosses the line. Now, 5 laps completed. Berger is going across. He's much closer. It's 3.6 seconds. So, before very much longer, we're going to have the marvellous sight of the double world champion. There he is, Alain Prost, the Frenchman in the McLaren Honda, which has proved virtually unbeatable this year, being caught by and having a terrific scrap with the car you're going to see in just a second. There it is, Gerhard Berger, who knocked a wing off in practice. Fastest lap so far, 101.8 miles an hour, 163.8 kmh. And it's round the Markets turn, up to Stag turn, third gear, about 70 miles an hour, which they're approaching now. Then the hammer goes down as Berger goes up from into fourth gear at about 150 miles an hour. He's approaching Brewery Bend now. He can see Prost in front of him, and he can see in his mirrors behind him the third place man, Ayrton Senna. It's Prost, Berger, Senna, Piquet, Patrese, Mansell.
Yes, in fact, whatever problem Senna might have, it can't be too serious, because he's now found a new lease of life and speeded up and is lapping as quickly as Berger, which means that he is also catching Alain Prost at the moment.
There's the Ferrari, and there is the McLaren. Gap. This is the race at the front, and the gap is 3.2 seconds, only a tenth. Senna goes through, still in third position. Piquet now is being reeled in by Patrese, who is in fifth place, pulling away from Mansell sixth, and Ivan Capelli is on his way. The man that I, for one, have been expecting to do very well here at Adelaide, who was not at all good in practice, has made up 2 places from 9th to 7th.
Yes, and certainly the atmospheric cars are now beginning to show their teeth behind the leading turbos, because remember, of course, that the Atmo cars don't have a fuel limitation, as do the turbos, so they actually start the race quite noticeably heavier than the turbo cars, but of course as they use the fuel, then that weight disadvantage is quietly whittled away, and eventually, of course, they have a lower weight limit and they become lighter, and they are now beginning to lap in the low 23 seconds. That's Patrese and Mansell. Capelli are beginning to threaten. They're certainly not losing ground to the leading turbos now.
Capelli is actually lapping over a second slower than the turbos at the front at the moment, but it's a long way to go in this race, and as James was saying, the weight of the fuel and the consumption of the 3.5 litre cars will tell, and it's 2.7 seconds now between Prost, the leader there, of this, the 9th lap, and Berger in second place. And Berger has again gone round faster than anybody else. 1:22.012. A marvellous scrap at the front. And behind the Ferrari there is still Ayrton Senna. Senna is about 5 seconds ahead of Piquet, who is in 4th position. Piquet is 1.6 seconds ahead of Patrese, who is 5th. And Patrese is the same amount ahead of Mansell, who is 6th. So it is a McLaren leading, and Berger in second place and Senna in third.
We're back at the Grand Prix in Adelaide. In first place still Alain Prost, second Gerhard Berger, in third place the defending or reigning world champion after this race will be Senna, then Piquet is up, in 5th position Patrese, then Nigel Mansell. The only car out at this time is Alboreto, who crashed on the first lap. He walked away from the car. He's all right, and we'll now go back to Murray Walker and James Hunt.
Sincerely hope that he's not, but I'm afraid the reality of the situation is that I must surmise that he is, because I don't think he could possibly sustain this pace if he was using a level amount of power and fuel consumption to average through the race. Riding up the curve, Berger still absolutely on the limit and getting closer and closer all the time. And the heat of the battle for the lead, you see Senna there in the background, and they're beginning to drop Senna. Senna's dropping back slowly, gently. He's 7.5 seconds behind Berger.
11 laps into this 82-lap Australian Grand Prix, and there has only been one retirement thus far, and it is the significant one of the unfortunate Michele Alboreto, who has now driven the whole of his last race for Ferrari. But Gerhard Berger hasn't. Watch the way he goes. Now, let's see what the gap is. Prost crosses the line, Berger crosses the line. 1.2 seconds. Ever closer to Gerhard Berger's eye line is getting the gearbox of Alain Prost Ferrari. He will be able to read the small print on Prost's helmet before very much longer. Round Wakefield Turn, round East Terrace Bend, up to Flinders, up through the gearbox into 4th, 5th. About 130 miles an hour at this point. Market's Turn again. The people on the veranda of the pub at Stag Turn are going to get a real eyeful soon, and it's going to be the eyeful of Gerhard Berger riding on the rear of Alain Prost's Ferrari. Senna is still third, Piquet is still fourth. Turbo cars first, second, third and fourth. Patrese and Mansell fifth and sixth. Seventh and eighth, Capelli and Nannini. Warwick is ninth, Cappy is 10th, Boutsen is 11th and Streff is 12th.
Yes, and surprisingly, Patrese is actually beginning to get away from Nigel Mansell a little bit. He's pulled some 3 seconds on his teammate, and in fact, Capelli and Nannini are pretty much stuck behind Mansell. They're all in close company, and I would think they're probably trying to look for a way past.
Where is Ayrton Senna, I hear you asking yourselves? Answer, 7.5 seconds behind Berger. And Berger is now 1.2 seconds. The gap has steadied. By the way, a magnificent race by Alex Cappy, the little Italian in the Dallara. He is in 10th place, and he is staving off Thierry Boutsen in the Benetton.
Michele Aryton, that's terrible luck. Half a lap, and what happened?
I had an accident with Alex Cappy in the second corner.
Because you were so far back, you were stuck in the traffic.
Yeah, when you start so far from the first lines, it's quite normal to have this contact in the first corner. So bad luck this year.
So what happened? Did he just? It was impossible to avoid. He came into you.
Yeah, the car is in a really bad condition, I tell you.
Never mind. Okay, thank you, Michele.
Thank you, Barry.
Yes, and Modena didn't quite catch it right on the brakes, and it looked to me as if he just gave the wall a bit of a nudge then, so that's probably the end of Modena's race. Now Berger, the closest he's been yet. Berger working his way into a position to attack Prost for the lead. And certainly Berger's car very quick on the straight when he's using, and just seen that Stefano Modena didn't do any damage in that, or at least he's got going again, so Stefano Modena is back in the race. And we'll come back to you on how healthy he is.
And of course, Gerhard Berger has never left it. My goodness, this gritty Austrian is going for it. Keeps himself in trim with ice hockey in the winter. He needs good reflexes for this, and he's got good reflexes for the Grand Prix 2. Watch the Ferrari now edging up onto the gearbox of the McLaren. And if Berger decides to give it a touch more boost, going down Brabham Straight, which they are approaching now as they go down Rundle Road on the way to Brewery Bend, he could be right up with the Ferrari as they come out to Foster's hairpin, the slowest corner on the course, and Berger's going for it. Berger's going through on the inside, and a Ferrari leads the Australian Grand Prix on lap 14. Now, is Berger just saying, I don't care how much fuel he uses, I'm going to be in front when I retire? Or have Ferrari got the fuel consumption problem linked? Or, here's a replay, see the way he just drove straight out from behind Prost.
Yes, he did the right thing there. He sold him a bit of a dummy. He made as if to tuck in behind Prost going into the corner, and then nipped out at the last minute, and a lovely clean overtaking manoeuvre. Tremendous driving by Gerhard Berger, who really seems to be keyed up right to the limit. You can almost feel the confidence coming out of the cockpit of the Ferrari, and there's no doubt that Gerhard Berger is having a very enjoyable Sunday afternoon.
Allegedly the man with the slowest heartbeat in Grand Prix racing. He always looks incredibly cool and laid back, and he will be really enjoying this, but he is not relaxing one iota. Modena, by the way, has spun again, and I think he's in real trouble in the Eurobrunn. But now Gerhard Berger is almost a second ahead of Prost. McLaren's a second and third. Don't forget that Alboreto is out of the race. It's still the turbocharged Lotus Honda of Piquet in fourth place. Then the 2 3.5 litre Williams of Patrese and Mansell in the points, fifth and sixth.
Yes, and Nelson Piquet having his best race for quite a long time. He's seemed to got everything gathered up. He's in a very strong fourth place at the moment, some 6 seconds behind Ayrton Senna, because he really has had a bit of a disastrous season, Nelson Piquet, and his mood has rather reflected it, but let's hope he's able to go out with a good finish and cheer himself up and come back all refreshed and trying hard next year.
Thierry Boutsen, that is, Thierry Boutsen going off in the Benetton, and Boutsen was in 11th place. So now race order on lap 15 out of 82. There is the leader, Gerhard Berger. Prost is now 1.3 seconds behind him. Senna is in 3rd place, 6 seconds behind Prost. Piquet is 4th, 7 seconds behind Senna. Patrese is 5th, 1 second and less, as you see a replay of Boutsen.
And Brewery Bend seems to be the place that's catching everybody out. We've seen Modena go off there, Boutsen then spinning, but he managed to get away without hitting anything. So, and Modena in fact spun twice there. So one wonders if maybe there's a little bit of oil there, a little bit slippery on the entrance for some reason. So, Berger in the lead, but he's backed off his pace just a little bit. He and Prost are not going quite as quickly as they were when Berger was on the charge to catch and passed Alain Prost. Berger now lapping over a second slower than he was at the height of the charge. So maybe having gained the lead, he's come back on his turbo boost and is now, he was prepared maybe to invest some of his fuel to get into the lead, and it looks like he's now come back and is on the old economy run.
Still got the fastest lap of the race though, Gerhard Berger. He went round on lap 8, 1 minute 22.012. He's got his rhythm now. He can see Prost in his mirrors, of course. He's getting his pit signals both through his earphones on the radio and from the pit board that you just saw. And the Austrian is well on the way, and Jonathan Palmer is pulling out of the race on the main straight on lap 17. So it looks like retirements at the moment are Alboreto, Modena, I haven't seen him go past recently, Larori and Jonathan Palmer out of the race there.
We're back at the Australian Grand Prix here in Adelaide. Berger still in front with Prost, Senna, Piquet, Patrese, Mansell in that order. The hot pace has been taking its toll. We've had spin-outs from Modena, a couple of spins by him. We've had a spin-out by Thierry Boutsen. We've certainly been having... And there's a spin-out and an excursion by Nannini. Hey, I don't know whether he's kept the engine running. He's looking both ways to see what's coming. The yellow flags must be out to warn the other drivers. So Nannini and he's kept his engine running. Very important in this temperature to keep the turbo engine running because it may never start. So we're back, live action here, of course, and back to Murray Walker and James Hunt.
Berger has extended his lead a little bit, but Prost still got him very much in his sights. Berger crosses the line. Prost now 2.4 seconds behind, and Senna only 4 seconds behind them.
Don't forget what I was saying earlier on about this being a race of attrition. It's only been running half an hour or so. There's still nearly 1.5 hours to go. Fuel may yet prove to be a problem for Berger. Prost may yet prove to be being the canny man, just keeping Berger in sight and keeping his own fuel reading on the right side. Don't forget, too, that there's a lot of cars going to drop out of this race already. Alboreto is out. Modena has spun off twice. Larori is out of the race. Palmer is out. Boutsen has spun. Nannini has spun. It's a tough, hard circuit here at Adelaide. The drivers are changing up, changing down, braking, accelerating all the time. There is absolutely no remission for them. And now on the 20th lap, which is just under 1/4 distance, 3/4 of the race still to run, Gerhard Berger is still 2.5 seconds ahead of Prost, who is 4 seconds ahead of Senna. The two McLarens second and third, and doesn't that make a change? There is the pit signal, and in fourth position it is still Piquet, but getting closer to Piquet all the time is Patrese in fifth place. Getting closer to Patrese is Mansell in sixth position. In seventh place, Capelli, then Warwick is 8th, Cappy is 9th, De Cesaris is 10th, Streff is 11th, and Boutsen, in spite of the spin, is 12th.
And this is now developing into what would appear to be a very tactical race indeed for the leading turbocharged cars. Remember, of course, that they can adjust their boost, which adjusts accordingly their fuel consumption, and it would appear that the three leading drivers, Berger, Prost and Senna, have got into a bit of a game of cat and mouse with each other, because they're varying their speed almost from lap to lap. I have the advantage here of looking at the printout of their lap times each lap, and there's no way that with the variation we're getting amongst them, that they're a little bit of a slide there on Prost on entry. The back was a little bit loose as he turned in, and Prost doesn't like the car to be handling loose at the back. But they're certainly changing their power settings from lap to lap, and that would be in response to their readout, of course. They know at all times, they can see what they've got there. You see now 2.9 seconds behind Berger and 4.5 seconds ahead of Senna, and as Gerhard Berger sets up a new fastest lap at the front, 1 minute 21.9 seconds.
This is the last Grand Prix after years of dominance by the turbos, for the turbos. Are they going out at the top with a glorious victory? There's still a long way to wait for that, because now in fourth position it's still a turbocharged car, that of Riccardo Patrese, as you see Berger, and as you can see Berger is still the fastest on the circuit, 166.154 kilometers an hour, and that's 103 miles an hour. Prost second, then the second McLaren, and there is now something like 9 seconds between Berger, the leader, and Ayrton Senna in third position, and there is the Brazilian.
Yes, and behind Nelson Piquet, there's now both Williams threatening. Mansell has re-caught teammate Riccardo Patrese. Patrese is still behind Piquet, trying to find a way around, but as yet not looking very much as if he's going to, because, of course, of the power advantage that the turbo has when it gets to onto the straights. Berger still just inching away from Alain Prost up front. Some 3.4 seconds clear now. There's Senna, who's back in third place, nearly 6 seconds behind Prost. And it's interesting because Senna has been further away than that. Then then got the gap down to about 4 seconds. And now, as the leading pair have heated up their battle, Senna's dropped back a bit again.
Cars I'm talking about as I say that, because Nelson Piquet in fourth position is only separated by 1.7 seconds from Nigel Mansell, who is in sixth position. So we've got a bunch of 3 cars at the front, and there's the third of those 3, Ayrton Senna in third position, chasing his teammate there, Alain Prost second, with Berger leading. As you see, Ghinzani spinning again, and then Nelson Piquet has got right behind him the 2 leading 3.5-litre cars, and there's Piquet going through. There is Patrese, and that was Mansell, and here they are coming down the Brabham Straight, 4th, 5th and 6th together.
Jonathan Palmer, you're not getting a lot of luck these days. What happened?
Well, it just came out of the hairpin here before the start-finish line straight, and I think it must have torn a teeth off the crown wheel and pinion. It's lost all the drive through the transmission. Of course, that was terminal.
Boy, if you had a duck out drown. OK, thanks, Jonathan.
We'll be able to lead the 2 Williamses down the straight, so he may well, just by holding his line, taking it steadily through the corners to ensure not to make any sort of mistake that would let them through. He could fend them off for quite a long time. Now we get to the twisty bit of the circuit, and this is where the Williams will be able to reel in the Lotus Honda. Sparks there from Patrese's car, just bottoming over the bumps, and the circuit is really just to add to the driver's misery physically, because it is very hard work. It's pretty bumpy. Mansell twitching a bit. And now we're starting to come to the faster part of the circuit, and this is where PK, once they get out onto the straight, will be able to stretch the longer lengths of the turbo Honda engine. And you see, although the Williams cars can follow him round easily enough, there really isn't a point on the circuit as yet that I've seen where they look like standing any real chance of getting past PK so long as he makes no errors.
There are a lot of lasts in this race, and you're looking at a couple of them now. The last race for Nelson Piquet with a Honda engine, and the last race for Nigel Mansell in a Williams before he joins Ferrari. So Piquet fighting for that 4th place. Patrese, and they're coming up to the S's now, and the twisty bits at Wakefield Turn, East Terrace Bend, Flinders Bend. This is where the nimble Williams, with its Judd 3.5-litre engine and no throttle lag, could start to catch Nelson Piquet. The best Piquet has done this season is 2 third places. He will want to improve on that here, the last Grand Prix of 1988.
Yeah, he's certainly responding to the pressure from behind, because Nelson has just put up his fastest lap of the race so far. And Alessandro Nannini has gone into the pits.
Lap 25, Berger leading by 3 seconds, Prost second still, and he is 7 seconds ahead of Senna. As you look at the battle for 4th place, Piquet, Patrese, Mansell, Lotus, Williams going into the right-hander at racetrack hairpin. Behind them, it is Capelli 7th. De Cesaris is in 8th position, and that's excellent. The Italian in the Real is up into 8th position after a good practice. Thierry Boutsen has recovered from his spin, is in 9th position, ahead of Derek Warwick, who is 10th. Caffey is 11th, Streff is in 12th position, then Nakajima is 13th, 14th is Pierluigi Martini, Johansson is 15th, then Gujamin Chiva Nannini, because of the spin, has dropped to 18th, Sala is 19th, and René Arnoux in the Ligier is 20th, and they are all still on the same lap, with Gerhard Berger the fastest lap so far, 1 minute 21.9. And the Victoria Park part of the circuit, the horse racing part of the circuit, they go in there, and that's Arnoux taking Berger. Arnoux done it yet again. He's done it yet again, and into the lead goes Prost. Where's Senna going up into 2nd place? René Arnoux, the man with the widest car on the course, and the man who continually does this, has taken the leader, Berger, out of the race.
And a man who has no business to be in Grand Prix racing with the standards of his driving, and he's ruined the race for us. We had a wonderful race on our hands, and look at it again. Berger is quite clearly lapping him. He's coming down the inside. Arnoux takes not the blindest bit of notice, takes the front corner off the Ferrari, and that really is a disaster, because we had a tremendous race on our hands, tremendous tactics going on up front, and now Prost has been handed the lead. The marshals now got the unpleasant task of removing those 2 stricken cars, getting them off the track, and they're not quite so easy to handle when they got all bent and bitter and twisted suspension, as you see there. And what a terrible shame that René Arnoux, who really has had long enough in Grand Prix racing to prove that he's got no business in it, that he can interfere and ruin the race for all of us. Now Prost is going through the traffic there.
Well, that is René Arnoux' 130th Grand Prix, and it is the one that, frankly, brings him nothing but shame. He has, as James says, completely destroyed what was showing every sign of being a magnificent race. The question now is Alain Prost going to win for the 7th time this year, or can Ayrton Senna catch him and make it his 9th Grand Prix victory? it looks like now, even at this stage of the race, and we are on lap 26 out of 82, like another McLaren 1-2, and that would be the 12th of the year.
Yes, very much so, because they've already got a big lead over Nelson Piquet, who of course has now moved up to 3rd place, courtesy of, yes, Senna is now some 19 seconds ahead of Piquet, so there's no threat to the two McLarens behind, but there is some threat to Alain Prost, who throughout this season has found lapping the back markers a lot more difficult than Ayrton Senna has managed to. Prost is a lot more wary and a lot more cautious, and they're in amongst the traffic now. They'll be lapping cars for the rest of the race, and throughout the season that has always worked to Senna's advantage. Senna is closer to Prost than he was 3 or 4 laps ago. He's only 4.5 seconds behind him right now.
Now, there is one thing that might just be a joker in the pack. Ayrton Senna, that you are looking at now, damaged his right wrist playing football in Bali between the Japanese Grand Prix and coming here to Australia. He's had that wrist quite heavily strapped up during practice, protesting that it really didn't bother him very much, but that was in a situation where he was not having to drive a grueling 2-hour race. On the other hand, now he will know that Berger is out of the race. Incidentally, Modena is not out of the race, despite the fact that he has spun twice. I see him there in front of Senna, so he's very much in the running. And Ayrton Senna, with the knowledge that he could still here in Adelaide achieve that 13th win of the year, that 9th win of the year, sorry, he's had 13 poles, the 9th win of the year, and that would add to his point score. At the present moment, Ayrton Senna has 87 scoring points in the championship. That is Ghinzani, who has clearly spun again and is rejoining the circuit. Now, Ayrton Senna, if he won this race, would be able to add more points. He's got to drop a score, which would be a 4th place, 3 points. So he could add 6 points to his already record score and finish up with an incredible 93 points. But not if that man, Alain Prost, can stop him. Prost leading the race, 2nd in the championship, place 1, +4 on Ayrton Senna, or he was on the previous lap. Prost goes across the line, followed by Ayrton Senna now. The gap is increasing. Alain Prost is now 5 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna, who is in 2nd place. And as we have seen so many times this season, in fact, 14 times this season out of 15 races, the McLarens are dominating the event. Nelson Piquet now goes through, and Nakajima is between Nelson Piquet. He's been lapped. Satoru Nakajima is between Nelson Piquet and Riccardo Patrese and Mansell, and will, I have no doubt, not be making it too easy for the 2 Williams cars to get ahead of him, with the knowledge that if they do so, they could close up on and pass his teammate. Of course, Piquet is now in 3rd position. In fact, the order on lap 29 out of 82, Prost is leading Senna by 5 seconds. Senna is leading Piquet in 3rd place by 20 seconds. Patrese is 1 second behind Piquet in 4th place. Mansell is 5th, 1.7 seconds behind Patrese. And Capelli, Ivan Capelli in the March Judd, has slowly made his way up and up and up. From 9th position to 6th he is in now. He's in a point-scoring position, and I remind you that Ivan Capelli is the man who finished a magnificent 2nd in Portugal, and actually for a few hundred yards led the Japanese Grand Prix, the first time that a 3.5-litre engined car had done so for 4 years. And you're looking now at Piquet, Patrese and Mansell.
Yes, and Piquet seems to be controlling that little battle pretty effectively from the front, using the turbo advantage very well indeed, because really the 2 Williamses, although I'm sure they could go a bit quicker if they could get past him, they just don't seem to be able to get close enough to pose any real threat at the moment.
No, and if Ayrton Senna has got, if Nelson Piquet has got a fuel plus, he's all right. But now Mansell, you can see, is getting very close to Riccardo Patrese. Looking down on this magnificent Adelaide circuit with its perfect facilities, excellent road surface, magnificent organisation. It really is a demonstration of the way to do it. And Mansell exits the right-hander of Brewery Bend. It looks to me just every bit as quick as Patrese, but hats off to Riccardo Patrese. He really has come alive in the last 2 or 3 races. And Mansell, in his last race for Williams, will not want to be beaten by his teammate. And the fact that Mansell and Patrese are fighting each other for that 5th position is giving Piquet the opportunity to ease out the gap between himself and the Italian.
Yes, and Mansell starting to look impatient behind Riccardo Patrese, and I would think that Mansell would like to be saying to Riccardo, OK, you've had a go at trying to get past Piquet, let me past, and I'll see what I can do.
Alain Prost has lapped everybody up to the 16th place man at the moment, and that is Alessandro Nannini. It's not a happy race for the Benetton team. They did not do all that well in practice by their standards. Thierry Boutsen starting 10th on the grid and Alessandro Nannini starting 8th. And now Boutsen is in 8th position. And Nannini, of course, is well down on account of that very heavy spin that he had earlier on. But still, the battle of the race at the moment is Piquet, Patrese, Mansell, 3rd, 4th, 5th. There is the Englishman, and here are all 3 of them. The leader, Alain Prost, goes through to complete his 32nd lap, and the gap between him and Ayrton Senna now is 6.2 seconds.
Yeah, Gerhard, that's terrible luck. What happened?
I break out one of the, I think it was Ferrari or Modena, and I thought René Arnoux have seen me, and I had some brake problems too because it was very hot. So he turns in and I had no chance to brake anymore, and he just go over my front wheel.
Oh, so sad. Okay, sorry, Gerhard.
The gentleman and sportsman that he is, he controlled himself because he must have been absolutely shatteringly disappointed and angered by that stupidity from René Arnoux, that lack of any apparent. He seems to be in a world of his own, taking no interest in the fact that he's being lapped by somebody who's leading the race. So Prost still looking very controlled. Prost has just done his fastest lap of the race. He's now broken the 1:22 barrier, and he's 6 seconds, just over 6 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna.
Prost's fastest lap, 1 minute 21.9, compares with Berger's lap record last year with 4-bar boost, 1 minute 20.4. So Prost is 1.5 seconds off the lap record, but with at least 200 horsepower less than Berger had last year. And Alain Prost is coming up now behind Nannini, who slows up and lets him through, and that was the exact point where yesterday Nannini hit the wall very hard indeed.
And further down the field, we've got a tremendous battle raging for 9th place. Derek Warwick holds 9th place, but climbing all over the back of him are Alex Cappi and Philippe Streff. So Prost, a bit of traffic in front of him. Yes.
Alex Cappi looks to me as though he's retiring, touring in to retire, and that is a great pity, because this little Italian seems to get better and better race by race, and Cappi is retiring from 10th position on the 35th lap, as Ayrton Senna there continues to drive along rather than have any effect on the lead of his teammate Alain Prost. Senna in 2nd position, and the gap between Senna 2nd and Prost 1st is 6.2 seconds. So it's a demonstration race, and a very effective demonstration. There is Alex Cappi. He is indeed out of the race. parked beside the wall. Those blocks are put in position on what are basically everyday streets. Well, not basically, they are everyday streets in Adelaide during the rest of the year. And now Mansell is in a challenging position for that 4th position, which is held by Riccardo Patrese. Now, Riccardo Patrese is a man who in the past has been accused of being unnecessarily obstructive, who seemed to have overcome that habit, who in one or two occasions recently showed he'd got it again. I wonder if he's going to defer to Mansell, knowing that he, Patrese, will be with Williams next year when they are using the Renault V10 engine, and that Mansell will not be his teammate any longer. I suspect that not for 1 second will he defer.
So would I. Leopards don't change their spots, I've always believed, and I'm quite sure Mansell expects it to be very difficult to get past him. He's now showing that he's certainly keen to do it, and Mansell seems to lose a little bit on the straights.
Yeah, Rennie Arnoux, you just had a contretemps with Gerhard Berger, and everybody says that you are very difficult to pass. What can you tell us what happened?
I am really sorry because I have another car in the back of my car, and I turned in and I didn't see Gerhard. I am really sorry for Gerhard because he was first at this time, and I don't know. I turned in because I don't see the Ferrari car.
So you didn't actually see him in your mirrors, but everybody says it's so difficult to pass Rennie Arnoux.
It's very difficult to pass every driver, I think, in Formula 1. But Gerhard, one lap more of me, and if you see some race before, when the leader of the race is in the back of my car,
Any sort of misunderstanding and having to lift just as you're coming out of a corner will give the others the chance to get alongside. Meanwhile, up front, Alain Prost has now put up the fastest lap of the race with a 21.7. Piquet uses the power of the turbo to get past, and he gets a little bit of a breather. Provides a little cushion before the two Williamses.
Philippe Alliot at the wheel. Incidentally, Yannick Dalmas, Philippe Alliot's teammate, is not here in Japan. The unfortunate man has Legionnaire's disease, failed to drive in the Japanese Grand Prix with what was thought to be an ear problem, turned out to be Legionnaire's disease. His place in practice, and through past goes Patrese, so Patrese is now ahead of Alliot and can take up the battle with Piquet. And I was telling you about Dalmas. His place was taken during practice by Pierre-Henri Raphanel, the French Formula 3000 driver, who got off the plane on Thursday, only the day before practice began, never having even sat in a Formula 1 car, did extremely well, but just failed to qualify for his first Grand Prix, which certainly would have been a very tough one here at Adelaide, a nearly 2-hour race. So the order is resumed. Well, the order didn't change, but they were interrupted by Alliot, and on lap 37, it is Prost leading by a comfortable 7 seconds. There he is from his teammate Ayrton Senna. Then there is quite a long gap before, in 3rd position, the gap is 35 seconds. Piquet goes through with Patrese and Mansell, 4th and 5th, right behind him. Capelli is in 6th position, and he is some 14 seconds behind Mansell. De Cesaris is out of the points in 7th place. Boutsen is 8th. Warwick is 9th. 10th is Philippe Streff, 11th is Martini. Then in 12th position is Stefan Johansson in the Ligier, the only one left now that Arnoux has disgraced himself. And the Ligier hasn't been as high up in the field as that for a long time, but Stefan Johansson has been lapped. Gugelmin in the 2nd march is in 13th place. Cheever is 14th, Nannini 15th, Sala 16th, Modena 17th in spite of his double spin. Philippe Alliot is 18th, and Nakajima is 19th. As you see, Eddie Cheever there being caught by Nannini, and they are respectively in 14th and 15th places.
That's one of the Eurobruns. That's Modena that you're looking at now, the ex-Formula 3000 European champion. Piquet. Well, Nelson Piquet at the present moment looks as though he might be on his way to his third place in 1988, having finished in that position in Brazil and San Marino. And Piquet, in terms of the championship, is in 6th position. So the 4 points that he would get would be very welcome. It wouldn't make any difference, I think. Although Michele Alboreto, who is the man ahead of him in the championship, in 5th position, is of course out of this race and will not be scoring any points.
We're back for more coverage of the Australian Grand Prix. Alain Prost is now leading, as you know. Ayrton Senna is 2nd, Piquet is 3rd, Patrese is 4th, Nigel Mansell still struggling with 5th. Ivan Capelli's got into the pits with 6th. Now the car's out of the race. Alboreto's out, Larari is out, the Jonathan Palmer is out, Berger, Arno and Caffey. The accidents involving Alboreto, Berger and Arno have brought no injuries at all. There's been quite a few spins. We'll go straight back to Murray Walker and James Hunt.
Piquet goes through to complete the lap, still in 3rd position, and Nigel Mansell is being drawn away from by Riccardo Patrese. When they start the next lap, it will be the 41st lap in this 82 lap and a half distance. But I say again, this Australian Grand Prix of 1988 is far from finished. Last year, only 8 drivers were classified as finishers. It's a tremendously demanding circuit. There are at the present moment 19 drivers out of the 26 who started effectively still running, because Alboreto is out, Larari is out, Palmer is out, and so, to our misery, our Berger, and not to our misery actually, René Arnoux, who took Berger off in an absolutely outrageous move. But Patrese has taken up the cudgels again. You can see now how close the Italian is to the Brazilian, Nelson Piquet, in the yellow Lotus Honda. Incidentally, we have news today that Satoru Nakajima, the Japanese driver, has re-signed for Lotus in 1989. Lotus will be using Judd engines, so it's the same team next year for Lotus as it has been this year. This man, number 1, 3 times world champion Nelson Piquet and his Japanese teammate Satoru Nakajima. And the gap between Nelson Piquet in 3rd position and Nigel Mansell in 5th is 1.5 seconds. It's amazingly consistent. The fastest lap of the race is that of Ayrton Senna, 1 minute 21.668. That is exactly 1.2 seconds outside Gerhard Berger's 1987 lap record of 1 minute 20.4, a speed of 105.1 miles an hour. And you're looking at Piquet on the left, 3rd position. Patrese in the basically white Williams in 4th place, and Nigel Mansell thundering along in the background. Another item of news while you're watching this battle, 3rd, 4th and 5th, is that Bernie Ecclestone, the head man of FOCA, has admitted that he has sold all the share capital of the Brabham organisation to Walter Brunn, the Swiss slot machine magnate, who is the money behind the Eurobrunn team. And Brabham will next year be racing with, it is understood, Judd engines. Who the drivers will be, I have the faintest idea.
There we see on the caption a new fastest lap for Alain Prost. So the 2 McLaren drivers trading fastest laps as their fuel load lightens. And the gap now, 8.5 seconds for Prost to Senna. Senna lost a little bit in traffic over the last couple of laps. And although Senna is fighting hard, it does look to me as, and making Prost work all the way, it does look to me as if Prost is pretty much in control today.
And in less than 10 minutes, a very sad Gerhard Berger will be getting into a helicopter to leave for his home in Wörgl in Austria at the end of an Australian Grand Prix, which he might well have won for the second year in succession. We haven't heard any more about the rain. Hopefully it was just a few spots of rain, but we do know that Sala, the Spanish driver, has stopped, so that looks like another retirement here in Australia. And believe me, there are going to be a lot more, because there is as much of this race still left to run, almost, as has already been run. That graphic gives you the relative positions of the first 4 men, and you can see that visually there is something now like half a lap between Prost, the leader, and the battle between Piquet and Patrese, which showed momentarily that Patrese was ahead of Piquet there, but I think that that was just the graphic, because Alain Prost on lap 44 now out of 82 is building up his lead over this man, Ayrton Senna, all the time. Senna, the very worthy world champion of 1988 with 8 victories. And even if Prost wins this race, which he shows every sign of doing, Senna will still have won more races than Prost. And that is the way the world champion should be decided. The man who gets the most points from winning the most races. But Prost is on his way at the moment to his 7th Grand Prix win. He is 9 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna. And then it continues to be the battle between Piquet, Patrese, who is the leading 3.5 litre car driver, in 4th position, Mansell 5th, Capelli 6th. 7th is De Cesaris, almost in the points, as he has been once before this season. Thierry Boutsen is 8th and catching De Cesaris. 9th is Philippe Strepp, and that's his best performance so far this year, the Frenchman in the AGS. 10th is Derek Warwick, 11th is Martini. 12th is still Johansson. In 11th position, it is Martini. Sorry, 12th is Johansson. 13th is Gugelmin. 14th is Chiva. 15th is Nannini. In 16th place, it is Modena. And here is Andrea De Cesaris going on the inside of Capelli.
Yes, he's been hounding Capelli for some laps now. And so that means that De Cesaris moves up into 6th place, one of his best race for quite a long time, and he's got quite a lot of amends to make up after his rather ridiculous performance in Japan, when he, in the middle of the race, slowed right down to remonstrate with a backmarker who he considered had done the dirty on him, and drove them both to a virtual halt. And meanwhile, 2 people who were behind him nipped past, and he lost 2 places that he never regained. So that was pretty much his comeuppance for that. But in fairness to him, on this day, he's driving a very good race.
Yes, it was the unfortunate Aguri Suzuki having his Grand Prix baptism, who was crowded off the course by De Cesaris. Now, hats off to the Italian, actually. As I said earlier on, when he goes jolly well. The trouble is he goes off too often in the process. But he's looking strong at the moment. He had a 4th place in Detroit. The best place he had next to that was a 9th position in Canada. And this is another last as you watch Piquet in 3rd position in the yellow Lotus, chased by Patrese. The other last is that of De Cesaris, because it's his last race in the German Real team before he joins Dallara, and into the pits comes Nakajima. Now, Nakajima was in 18th position. It's a tyre stop. We didn't expect that, actually. The Goodyear technicians were pretty confident that unless the drivers scrubbed their tyres through spinning, which of course is exactly what Nannini has done, they would all be able to go through non-stop. So it's not a criticism of the tyre, it's the misfortune of the driver to have lost it and probably flat-spotted his tyres. Maurizio Gugelmin, chased by Nakajima, who has just come out of the pits. There's Piquet catching Modena to lap the man who is in 16th place. Stefano Modena 16th in the Europrun. And in this twisty section, unless Piquet can get through, and he has, I was going to say this would give Patrese in 4th place and Mansell 5th position the opportunity to close up. Modena sticks his hand out of the cockpit to say, pass me on my right. Thank you, Stefano, says Riccardo. Thank you, Stefano, says Nigel. Past him they both go. 3rd, 4th, 5th. Piquet, Patrese, Mansell. No change. No change at the front. Prost and Senna. De Cesare is 6th. Capelli down to 7th. Boutsen is still 8th, but 8 seconds now behind Capelli. And Capelli's probably got an overheating problem. I know that was worrying the March team potentially.
And another fastest lap for Alain Prost, and his lead is now mounted into double figures over Ayrton Senna, just under 11 seconds, 21.559 for Alain Prost. There we see it on the caption, and he seems to be getting more and more on top in his private battle with Senna today.
If Alain Prost wins this race, which he is certainly showing every sign of doing, it would not only be his 7th Grand Prix victory of 1988, it would be... And hello, there is Nakajima in a very, very bent Lotus. So Satoru Nakajima, who went, I suspect that his trouble would have been cold tyres, and he hit Maurizio Gugelmin. So Nakajima came out of the pits on cold tyres. What do you mean, cold tyres? What I mean is that the temperature would not be as high as it would be in racing conditions. Here's a replay. So you see the Minardi spinning. You see that Nakajima had got nowhere to go and that Gugelmin hit him. So as the Japanese exits his car, I expect we'll be seeing that again later, and we'll be able to give you a fuller description of what happened, that it was certainly one of the Minardis. I didn't spot which one, to be quite honest with you. Just a minute, it was Martini, Pierluigi Martini, who spun. Here it is, there's Gugelmin and Piquet. Now, there is Martini spinning in front of Johansson. So Martini spins, Johansson avoids it. Gugelmin is hit by Nakajima, and it's goodbye, mum, from the Japanese and the Swedish driver. Johansson may yet regain. I didn't see how badly damaged his car was, but that's certainly Gugelmin out. So now we have Alboreto out, Larari out, Palmer out, Berger out, Arnoux out, Sala out, Nakajima out, and Gugelmin out. And I say again, there are going to be more, because the longer this race goes, and although it is not as hot as it was yesterday, when we had temperatures in the mid-90s, some 37 degrees centigrade, it is still very, very warm out there. The cockpit temperatures will be very high indeed. And in this race, on this circuit, a race which is going to last nearly 2 hours, and where the drivers are constantly changing direction, braking, accelerating, they get very, very tired indeed. Senna over the line. Now, he has now completed 49 laps. He's now 11 seconds behind the indomitable Alain Prost. There is Piquet in front of Ghinzani, who has been lapped in the Zach speed. And Piquet is making better use of the traffic, I must say, than Patrese and Mansell are able to, because Piquet seems to be hitting it at just the right time. Mansell attacking Patrese, coming out of Foster's hairpin. Patrese in 4th place, being pushed very hard indeed by Nigel Mansell. 2 cars of equal specification and ability. 3.5 litre Williams jug.
Yes, and Mansell has every lap closed up very sharply at Foster's hairpin under braking, and I think that's where he's going to have to line up his attack. His problem there, though, is that the entrance to the corner is very narrow, and it shouldn't be too difficult for Patrese to defend his position unless Nigel can sell him a dummy.
And in case you're wondering what that bit of technical jargon means, it means that I'm pretending I'm going to go this way when in fact I bob round the other way. And Nigel's very capable of doing that. Cheever then passing coming out of the slipstream and going through in the arrows. And Patrese indulging in a little weaving there. Racetrack hairpin. That is a second gear corner. Now they're into the Victoria Park. That's the horse racing track on the left of the drivers. You can't see it. They go into the right-hander at Costas now. And Mansell is getting into a position. Now they've got Warwick, Cheever and Nannini. But now, in front of Piquet, who is followed by Patrese and Mansell, Warwick and Nannini and Cheever. And so the third, fourth and fifth cars that you're looking at, Piquet third, Patrese fourth, Mansell fifth, are bearing down on 3 cars to lap them. And if there isn't a position change somewhere by the time they have done so, I would be rather surprised. Now there is Warwick with Cheever behind him, chased by Nannini. Warwick is in 12th place, Cheever is 13th, Nannini is 14th. They're about to be lapped by Nelson Piquet, who is third. And Nannini takes Warwick, tucks in behind Cheever. So Nannini has moved up a place. Piquet is past Warwick. But still the 2 arrows, I was going to say are ahead of Patrese, they're not, because Patrese takes Warwick. Now he's got Nannini who is about to lap. Piquet is showing all his experience. The 3 times world champion, Nelson Piquet, who is in his 157th Grand Prix, is showing all his experience. And look at the gap now that there is. Just a bit greater than it was before, as Piquet on the start and finish straight passes Eddie Cheever, who tucks in behind the Lotus. Now Patrese's got to get past the arrows on the tricky bit of the circuit, coming up to the right-hander at Wakefield. Trying to go through on the inside, but Cheever shuts the door. Now the left-hander at East Terrace Bend, the right-hander at Flindon.
And Mansell closer yet again. It does just appear to me that when they get out onto the straight, for some reason, Patrese just seems to have that little bit more power than Mansell. He just stretches the lead every time they get onto the quicker bits of the circuit. Now, we're turning onto the main straight. And Mansell, although he's behind in the slipstream, therefore getting the advantage of the hole in the air, seems to drop back.
And once again, the Australian Grand Prix has shown us, as Mansell tries to take Patrese on the inside, once again the Australian Grand Prix is showing us how tremendously competitive Grand Prix racing. What over Patrese spins? That's it. Patrese has at last been forced by Nigel Mansell into making a mistake, and I'm quite sure that that is what Nigel was trying to make happen all the time. And Nigel Mansell goes up into 4th place. Can he do anything about Nelson Piquet?
Yes, I quite agree with you, Murray. That was just the relentless pressure from Mansell. Finally forced the error from Patrese. Here you are. You see Patrese just gets it a little bit wide on the entrance. He's not quite on the line. It's a bit slippery off line, and the back just flips around on him. Harmless spin, but, well, harmless to the car and to Patrese, but harmful to his position in the race.
But he has managed to regain the circuit. That's one of the good things about that kind of exit to a corner. Prost goes through, and Prost has now completed 53 laps. We have a new 4th place man, and you are looking at him at this moment. It is Nigel Mansell. Senna is still 11 seconds behind Alain Prost. There is the race leader, who is on lap 54 in this 82-lap race, demonstrating that his title of the Professor, he has an alternative one of the Terrorist, because he is a man to be very worried about. And Alain Prost is now well on his way to his 7th Grand Prix win of 1988, leading Ayrton Senna by 10.8 seconds. And the interest is not so much between Prost and Senna as between Piquet in 3rd place and Mansell in 4th position, who is catching him, who is only 1.7 seconds behind as Prost goes on the inside of Warwick. And that is what should have happened at that corner when Berger came through to pass Arnoux.
Yes, indeed. A real shame for the race, for our afternoon's entertainment, because I'm sure there was a lot of battling to do between Berger and Prost, had that battle been allowed to continue. So Prost through for another lap, and really appearing very much to be controlling his gap to Senna. It's he got it up to 10 seconds, and it's been hovering between 10 and 11 seconds for some time now. He certainly looks quite comfortable. So Warwick in for tyres, but he's got a problem. They're working around the back of the car, so I think he's probably got some sort of engine trouble.
Yes, Arrows have had an enormous amount of engine trouble during practice, especially actually Eddie Cheever rather than Derek Warwick. But Warwick's place is slipping away. Of course, being in the pit as long as that is doing his chances in the race absolutely no good at all. He was in 16th position. But now here is Prost, there is Senna, and Prost has already lapped Thierry Boutsen. Cheever is out of the race to join the retirees, and now in this Australian Grand Prix, in terms of effective runners, there are just 16 of them left, which means to say that 10 of them are out of the race.
We're back here in Adelaide for the Grand Prix of Australia. Fast and furious it is, with Alain Prost still leading his teammate Ayrton Senna. Nelson Piquet, the defending world champion, is third. Patrese is fourth. Mansell is fifth. De Cesaris is now sixth. And that's the order. The cars out of this race, there's been quite a few of them out so far, and there they are. Alboretta's out, Laroni's out, Palmer's out, Berger, Arnoux, of course, they came in contact. Caffey and Salah went out. Nakajima and Gugelman, they had an accident. And Eddie Cheever, the young American, born in Phoenix, Arizona, living in Monte Carlo, he's out of the race as well. That's 10 cars in total. Of course, it has been an exciting Grand Prix. The main issue of this Grand Prix so far, and controversial it is the incident that happened, and here it is in replay. Gerhard Berger came alongside the blue car of Arnoux. He moved right over on him. The car climbed upside there. It could easily have gone upside down, a classic accident. René Arnoux, known to be very difficult to pass, unfortunately doesn't use his rear view mirrors correctly. Caused what I would say is a tragedy to this race in a way, because it was building up to something absolutely wonderful, and I think the Honda engine McLarens would have been having a tough job to keep up with Berger. However, that was not to be. We'll go back to our commentary group here, and that of course is Murray Walker and James Hunt.
So Prost, despite the fact his lead is now 12.4 seconds over Ayrton Senna, is not letting up at all.
And as he goes into racetrack hairpin, you probably just saw Ayrton Senna going round the right-hander of Brewery Bend. So there is the full length of the Brabham Straight, otherwise known as Decaturville Terrace in Adelaide, when the Australian Grand Prix is not being held. And that represents in time just over 12 seconds. Lap 58. Prost ahead of Capelli. And the Italian, who a lot of people thought might win, including, I must be honest, myself, is in 7th place and has been lapped by Prost, but not yet by Senna. Prost through, Senna through, Niki Lauda, who's over here with Lauda Air. He's just got Australia onto the routes of his Austrian airline, which is doing very nicely, thank you. And he's seeing his first Grand Prix for the whole of 1988. Says it hasn't changed all that much. Ayrton Senna, 2nd position. And while you're looking at Senna, we are looking for Mansell and Piquet. And now Mansell, there he is. Look at this. You could be seeing a change for 3rd position any moment now, because Mansell is getting closer and closer and closer to Nelson Piquet. This is the battle for 3rd position, and they're approaching the part of the course where the nimbleness of the Williams could help Mansell.
Yes, and also the fact that there is a back marker in front of them, they're coming up to lap, and that's where I think Nigel will be pinning his hopes. And remember that these two had a coming together in the Japanese Grand Prix when Mansell was charging, came upon Piquet, who had several incidents and dramas already in the race, and they had a right old tangle when Nigel got launched right up in the air. So now onto the straight, but this is where Piquet used the extra power of the Honda Turbo, and Piquet would very much like to get a cut, get some breathing space between, but Mansell's going through, so Mansell's still chasing. Not close enough to have a go at Foster's hairpin, I don't think, on this lap, because that's where he got very close on the previous lap. Now, under braking here.
Alain Prost has again broken his previous fastest lap time. It's now 1 minute 21.2 seconds. And that is only 0.8 of a second off Gerhard Berger's lap record last year. And this is the excitement of the race. And we should also remember that Nigel Mansell, with the 3.5-litre Judd engine and unlimited fuel, will have absolutely no fuel problem at all. He can force as hard as the engine will let him, with the knowledge that he's got ample fuel to finish the race, whereas Nelson Piquet certainly can't. I know that the Honda engineers and technicians were worried about the ability of the McLarens and the Lotus cars to finish this race on the 150 litres of fuel that they are allowed if they were being forced. Well, Prost and Senna won't be having any problem, but Piquet might well be. The Lotus chassis does not handle as well as the McLaren chassis, and for all I know, and obviously I don't because I'm not in the cockpit, Piquet may have been having to use boost on occasions where neither Prost nor Senna had to, in which case, in the closing stages of the race, he may have to back off, in which case, too, Nigel Mansell would be through up into 3rd place to be on the podium for the 3rd time in the 3 races that he would have finished. However, that is all hypothesis. This is fact. Piquet has completed another lap, as has Mansell. They are on their 61st.
Yes, it looks very much to me as if Mansell is going to have to force a mistake out of Nelson Piquet. Either that, or Piquet is going to have some sort of a tangle with a back marker, or get held up by a back marker anyway, because quite frankly, the nature of the circuit means that the only places where Mansell would have a chance are preceded immediately by good long straights, and the Lotus Honda can get away from the normally aspirated Williams, and really Nigel's just going to have to keep pressuring away and try and get a mistake.
Derek Warwick, the end of a terrible week for you. What happened?
Well, the warm-up this morning, we had a misfire with the engine, and we thought we cured it. And at the start of the race, I jumped in the spare car, but that also had a problem. So I got back in my race car, and we just had a misfire for the whole race, and eventually it kept cutting out, and it was just a danger. So I didn't want to cause an accident out there, so I just parked it.
OK, thank you, Derek. Thank you.
It is incidentally Andrea De Cesaris that Prost is catching to lap, and Andrea De Cesaris is in 6th position. Now, I was saying I wonder if Senna has some sort of a problem, because, with no disrespect to Prost, I say again, it surprises me that Ayrton is as far behind his teammate in an identical car in a race and on a circuit that I would have expected to suit him very well, particularly bearing in mind that there is no pressure on either of them for the World Championship. That has been resolved. Alain Prost has now gone through and completed his 62nd lap. He therefore has 20 laps now to go between himself and his 7th Grand Prix victory of 1988. There's Piquet, that's Mansell in 4th position, and Piquet has eased out a little advantage over the Englishman, so he would seem not to be worried about his fuel. Thing is about a race in this stage, very often the drivers are grappling with a problem
like they have a clutch problem, or they are missing gears, or the tyres are going off, all sorts of things. For instance, Gugelmin in Japan had his water bottle in the cockpit break loose, and it was interfering with the pedals, and he was having to stamp on the water bottle in an effort to break it and let the water out so that he could operate the pedals without being encumbered. Now, we couldn't possibly have known that looking at the car from the outside. All that we knew was that Gugelmin wasn't going as fast as we would have expected him to. But Nigel Mansell is certainly dropping back. You can see that there's more than 1.5 seconds between him and Nelson Piquet now. As Prost goes through to complete yet another lap, there is still just about half a lap on the circuit between Prost in the lead on his 64th lap and Nigel Mansell, who has yet to come round and complete his 63rd. But when Mansell went through last time, the gap was about 1.5 seconds between himself and Nelson Piquet in 3rd position. There is one of them, there's Capelli coming into the pits now. Now, where is Piquet and where is Nigel Mansell, as Ivan Capelli, who was in 7th position and will now lose it, I think, goes into the pits for a tyre change. Up go the mechanics' hands. Out goes Ivan Capelli for a reasonable but not exceptional stop, and he's having trouble getting away. Now, there he is going into racetrack hairpin, and this is the reason that he stopped, very obviously. Yes, he's spinning. I wouldn't have thought he'd flat-spotted tyres with a gentle half spin like that. But anyway, he burst out of the pit lane. You could see that there was rubber crumb on the outskirt, on the exit of the pit lane, and there'll be a lot of that all round the circuit, colloquially known as marbles, because if you get on them, you can spin out without any trouble at all. And now Prost is on lap 64, 82-lap race. Senna is dropping further and further and further back. Now, the gap previously was 16 seconds, and Senna is visibly going much, much slower. The gap is now 21 seconds. Senna has got some sort of a problem. Prost is pulling away too much and too fast and too often for Senna to be driving a car with no problem whatsoever. And there was a spin there, which was just recovered, and Andrea De Cesaris has just missed it. And that means to say that Piquet will be a lot closer to Senna. The gap was 22 seconds, and I'm still waiting for Piquet to come through. Well, here he is. Piquet crosses the line. As you look at Prost, Piquet is well ahead of Nigel Mansell now. So it would seem that the emphasis at the front of the race is changing from the ability of Red 5, Nigel Mansell, in 4th place to catch Nelson Piquet, to that of Nelson Piquet to catch Ayrton Senna in 2nd place.
And now we see Alio there in his normally spectacular fashion, nearly got the thing stuck on its tummy on the curb. It's a very high curb, that. I think he did a bit of damage to the underneath of the car. I saw a few bits and pieces falling off it as he bounced it all over that curb, but he seemed to get going again.
Yes, Philippe Alliot has had more offs this year than you can shake a stick at. The Frenchman is very spectacular, and there you see it again, right up on the curb, dragging the under tray along. That won't have done it any good at all. Of course, he had 2 absolutely gigantic crashes in Monaco and Mexico. There is Nigel Mansell.
Yes, and Senna is definitely going slower. He's lapping some 4 seconds slower than he has been, and he's lost nearly 10 seconds in the last 2 laps to Alain Prost. So Senna is obviously in some sort of trouble, and that should fire Piquet up. He will have got that message from his pit, probably on his radio. You've also seen it on his pit board, and he is currently 32.7 seconds behind Senna. So we'll start watching that gap for you. And that's Nannini. Nannini stalled on the track. He's obviously had a spin.
That's at Stag Turn, the entrance to Rundle Road and the run down to Brewery Bend. Nannini's been doing a lot of this at this meeting. He put the Benetton very firmly into the wall, and he's obviously out of the race. Look at the positioning of the right front wheel in relation to the wing. So there is yet another retiree. Nannini out on lap 66, having, I imagine, hit the wall. I didn't see the whole of that spin, but there are getting to be less and less, as there were last year, runners in the Australian Grand Prix. The 16th and last race of the World Championship Series, dominated as ever by McLaren, but only because Arnoux took Gerhard Berger out of the race when the Austrian had a magnificent lead on lap 25 and completely destroyed the excitement of what was shaping up to be an absolutely magnificent race. And Senna, now the gap between Senna and Piquet is also coming down. I say also, the gap between Prost and Senna is increasing, and off spins Mansell. So there is a retirement. Nigel Mansell has again failed to finish in the Australian Grand Prix. He failed in 1986. He's given his leg a thump. He didn't even compete in 1987, of course, thanks to going off in practice in Japan. And it's a very sad finish to Nigel Mansell's career with Williams, with whom he has won so many races. Indeed, every race that Nigel Mansell has won in his career has been with Williams. And he's limping away now after 13 victories to finish his Williams career. What a sad, sad conclusion. But now his tyres looked bad before, you see, and don't forget that he'd been pushing Patrese. Patrese went off and now moves up a place.
Yes, he was appeared to be in a little bit of tyre trouble because he was losing ground to Nelson Piquet, and probably a bit of over-enthusiasm in his efforts to compensate for the lack of grip he was getting to the tyres, and then finally he just asked too much of the rear, spun the car, and basically threw away at least a fairly comfortable 4th place.
Race order then, lap 68. It is Alain Prost, 30 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna, with Nelson Piquet in 3rd position, Riccardo Patrese up to 4th position, Andrea De Cesaris up to 5th position, Thierry Boutsen is now in 6th place, Streff is 7th, Johansson is an incredible 8th. I say incredible because of the performance of the Ligier in the rest of this year. Capelli is 9th, Martini is 10th.
And that'll be a very exciting situation for Stefan Johansson, because he's got very serious motivation for this race, because Ligier need a 7th place in this race in order to get themselves into the top 20 teams, or top 20 cars, thereby getting free travel on all the overseas races. And because only the top 20 cars get their air freight paid, the other teams have to front up the money themselves, and that in a season is worth something like $2 million. So it's big money that Stefan Johansson's working for, and he just needs to get up one more place, and there will be mighty celebrations within the Ligier team.
We're back in Adelaide for the Grand Prix. You can see the leaderboard there. Alain Prost, the Frenchman, still leads here over Ayrton Senna, his own teammate in the same team. Then Nelson Piquet, a Brazilian just as Senna is in 3rd place. Riccardo Patrese, after a spin, has come up into 4th place again. 5th is De Cesaris, who's had an incident-filled weekend here. He's been spinning out quite a lot. And Thierry Boutsen, he's spun this weekend, and he had a spin today. He's come up into 6th position. We've got quite a lot of retirements involved in this race so far. Here's a long list of them: Alboreto, Larori, Palmer, Berger, Arnoux, Caffey, Sala, all of them are out. Nakajima's out, Gugelman, they had a crash together, Cheever, Nannini, Mansell, Modena and Ginzani. All of them are out of this race after 70 laps. The race certainly has been having lots of incidents involved. Nigel Mansell was in 4th position, lost control completely, the back end got loose, and look at the impact. Bang! In it goes. The rear wing certainly shortens that car by quite a lot. Nigel limped away, but he's perfectly all right. No injuries from today at all. And there you see Nigel coming out. I rather think he hit his leg getting out of the car, actually, because they are so tight for space. I don't think it was anything to do with the accident, because it was a rear-end accident, not a front-end accident. So there we have it. The race is still fast and furious. Don't go away, because Grand Prix, in my experience, the race is never over to the checkered flag. What seems to be a foregone conclusion just now in my books certainly is not the case. Let's go back to our commentary team. Murray Walker with James Hunt.
Berger and Alboreto in Italy, and what a famous victory that was. There's the man who lost that victory, Ayrton Senna, when controversially he came up to pass Jean-Louis Schlesser in the Williams at the chicane at the end of the straight after the parabolica. And here is some news that may yet transform this race. On lap 72 out of 82, again, as I look up into the sky and some darkening clouds, we have the news that on the far side of the course there have been what described as a few spots of rain. That's what we heard before. The few spots stopped, they didn't affect the surface, they might this time.
Yes, the clouds look a bit high to be any real threat or any threat of real rain, but of course getting little tiny spots, if it's just to make the circuit damp, it makes it very difficult for the drivers because they can't see very easily how wet it is. Now, the battle for second and third places between Senna and Piquet. Senna has responded. He seems to have found a little bit more speed again, and has certainly for the last lap has been able to stabilise that gap and hold the difference.
Yeah, the gap between Prost and Senna has come down from 34 to 30 seconds, which may well be Alain Prost already starting to pace himself home to victory. As you look at Riccardo Patrese in the Williams in fourth place, still chasing Nelson Piquet. Piquet is actually getting the gap between himself and Senna down, so Senna's problem, whatever it is continuing. It's 18 seconds now between Piquet and Senna, but Senna is now lapping faster than Piquet. 1:22.1 for Senna, 1:22.5 for Piquet, and Prost has slowed down and he's running 1 second a lap slower than Nelson Piquet, than Ayrton Senna, who is therefore the fastest man on the circuit. There is Alain Prost. He is on his 74th lap. And he's coming up now to lap Martini, the little Italian who gave Minardi their first ever point in World Championship racing when he made his comeback in the Detroit Grand Prix. He moves over, sees Prost large in his mirrors, lets the Frenchman through. The McLaren laps Martini for the second time, I think, and it's still Prost leading 30 seconds ahead of Senna. Then Piquet, 18 seconds further back. Patrese in fourth position. De Cesaris in fifth place. Thierry Boutsen once again showing signs of bringing a Benetton home in the points. And Boutsen is actually catching Andrea De Cesaris for fifth position. Thierry Boutsen is on one of those famous end-of-race charges of his, which have given him a record 6 third places in this 1988 Grand Prix season. And Boutsen will be going to the Williams team next year with very high hopes after his achievements this year. Lap 74. Now, the gap between Senna and Piquet is the critical one at the moment. Prost is well away now. No problem for him, it would seem.
Yes, and whatever Senna's problem is, he's certainly coping with it because he's responded to the threats. Apparently he's lost second gear, so that is what's been costing him the time, and he's obviously taught himself, he's found a way to drive round it more effectively because he's speeded up a bit, and he's certainly holding that gap to Nelson Piquet. Piquet is about to come past. He comes past, I'll give you the gap. And Boutsen has a broken exhaust. Piquet goes past. The gap has actually increased slightly, just over 19 seconds. So Senna appears not to be under any real threat at the moment.
But he is, Andrea De Cesaris is in the Real there. He is in 5th place, and notwithstanding the fact that Thierry Boutsen has a broken exhaust, which has happened before, here is the Belgian. Number 20 in the Benetton Ford, catching Andrea De Cesaris and being caught and about to be lapped by Ayrton Senna in 2nd position. Now, you heard from James that Senna has broken 2nd gear. There are 5 corners on this circuit where 2nd gear will be needed. And he's obviously going round them in 3rd now. De Cesaris 5th, Boutsen 6th. And the car behind them, Senna is 2nd. Prost is on his 76th lap. 6 laps to go, including the one he's on, as Senna exits Foster's hairpin, crosses the line, 32 seconds behind Alain Prost, gaining on the battle between Boutsen and De Cesaris for 5th position. Out of the race has gone Philippe Streff, the Frenchman. And there are now only 11 cars left in this race. Last year, only 8 finished.
Yes, and that moves Johansson up to that magic 7th place. So mighty huge will be the celebrations for the Ligier team if he can hold that to the end of the race.
Piercarlo Ghinzani's Zach speed doesn't look in any great shape as Riccardo Patrese rockets past him. And from the way that the Italian is straining in the cockpit as though to urge the car on, to no avail, it's very obvious that he is about to retire from the Australian Grand Prix. And all of a sudden, we now have 10 cars left and falling. Are we going to beat last year's record of 8 as out comes the steering wheel, followed from the Zach speed by Piercarlo Ghinzani as Prost goes on. Now, Boutsen seems to be missing. Now, wait, no, there he goes. Boutsen goes through right behind Andrea De Cesaris, who is in 5th position. There they are. Now, those two are on their 74th lap, and Boutsen is going for that 5th place.
Yes, you'll be suffering a minor power disadvantage there with that broken exhaust, and he certainly was able to lap on his own very quickly. He caught De Cesaris, but that could be a big handicap when it comes to finding a way past. That little lack of power down the straights will certainly hurt him when he comes to try and get alongside and outbrake him.
De Cesaris, like Arnoux, is a man who is famed for the difficulty of getting past. He'll be more than conscious of the fact that Thierry Boutsen is there, because he can see the very distinctively shaped Benetton large in his mirrors. And as you watch them round the right-hander at racetrack hairpin, with Boutsen getting ever closer, it is still, of course, Prost leading. Senna 2nd, Piquet 3rd, Patrese 4th. This is the battle for 5th between De Cesaris and Thierry Boutsen. They exit Foster's hairpin, approach the finish line. This is where Boutsen gained on De Cesaris on the previous lap. He will take some more out of the Real this time. But whatever happens, you've got to take your hat off to Andrea De Cesaris, who has driven a fine race. He qualified well in 15th position, and he's fought his way up from 15th to 5th, all right, as a result partly of retirements, but nevertheless he is on schedule for 2 World Championship points. There's not much of this race left now. 5 laps, including the one that they are on, which is lap 78, going round Markets Corner, Stag Corner. That's it there. These, don't forget, are all Adelaide city streets, specially shut for the occasion. You can see the concrete walls that have been specially put in, debris fences. Nothing has been left to chance, even electronic scoreboards around the circuit. No spectators anywhere are better informed than the ones here in Australia. There are 10 cars left running in the Australian Grand Prix with 4 laps minutes to go at the end of this one, and with Thierry Boutsen pushing Andre de Cesaris in the white and blue 3.5 litre Ford-powered Real for 5th position. Prost leading by 32 seconds. Senna 21 seconds now ahead of Piquet, and his second place looks secure, in which case the McLaren 1-2, the 12th of 1988, looks secure. Never before in the history of motor racing has one team dominated a full 16-race Grand Prix season as McLaren have. And Boutsen goes through, and de Cesaris goes off. So Thierry Boutsen is up into 5th place, and de Cesaris is seemingly out of the race. And that's what's happening?
It looked to me as if his engine just died on him, or some sort of, certainly a mechanical problem. He didn't go off at all, and it appeared to be pretty sudden.
9 cars left? No, 8 cars left, because tragically, Stefan Johansson, who had got up into that much-desired 7th position, which would have saved Guy Ligier some $2 million, is out of the race, and that is a replay of Thierry Boutsen moving up from 6th to 5th, the man who has scored a record 6 third places in 1988. And that retirement of Stefan Johansson's was, I was going to say, almost as tragic as that as Gerhard Berger. It wasn't actually, but it was tragic nevertheless, because poor Stefan has had an absolutely appalling season, having driven for McLaren, having driven for Ferrari, having driven for Spirit, having driven for Tyrrell, and at the moment looks as though he is out of a drive, although there are rumours that he will be with one of the new teams next year, like, for instance, Mike Earle's Onyx team. Prost. Now, last year's finishers record, or lack of finishers record, has now been broken, because with 3 laps, including this, the 80th, to go, Ayrton Senna there second, Prost leading. There are only 7 cars left, and if any more fall out, we are only just going to get enough people to take the World Championship points places. 9 points for a win, down to 1 point for 6th position. It's going to be 7 victories for Alain Prost, who has dominated this race ever since the unfortunate Gerhard Berger was rudely removed from it by René Arnoux. And at the moment, it is a Honda-powered 1st, 2nd and 3rd, because that is Nelson Piquet. There is Riccardo Patrese in 4th place, this man. And Prost is leading 32 seconds ahead of Senna, who is about 19-20 seconds ahead of Nelson Piquet, and there is no likelihood of anybody in the first 3 catching any of the men ahead of them. And so, unless there is a retirement, you are now seeing the race winner, Alain Prost, to make McLaren's double yet again. He's on his 81st lap. He's about to start the last lap. So let's think back very quickly as Prost approaches Foster's hairpin for the last time but one, and remind ourselves that for 25 spirited, superb laps, this race was led by Gerhard Berger, who had fought his way to the front, only for Alain Prost to take it over, and now there's just this last lap between him and his 35th Grand Prix victory.
Yes, fine drive by Prost, well deserved. He's been on top form all weekend, all through qualifying. He certainly was dominant in this race over the new world champion and his teammate Ayrton Senna. But Gerhard Berger was the one who gave us all a very pleasant surprise by catching and passing Prost in the early stages, only to be taken off by René Arnoux when he was lapping him. And in mitigation slightly for René Arnoux, whose business it is to know when you're being lapped, as it is of all drivers. But Berger did take a pretty much of a flyer move at him, because, of course, that was the only way he was going to beat Prost. He was prepared to take risks, but he wasn't fully alongside Arnoux, but Arnoux, of course, just in a world of his own, closed the door on him, and it was a huge disappointment to everybody here in Adelaide, this huge crowd, to have that battle removed from them so summarily. So Prost on his way, and Senna comfortable in second place.
And just watch Glenn Dix. He has a checkered flag style like no one else in the world, which Alain Prost is about to see as he exits Foster's hairpin to win his 35th Grand Prix, second in the World Championship. A magnificent victory, which he is obviously very, very happy and deservedly happy about. And fittingly, the last turbocharged Grand Prix after a decade and more of these engines is dominated by Honda engines. Victory in the McLaren for Alain Prost. Second place there, Ayrton Senna in the McLaren Honda. And Nelson Piquet will be third to take his third place of 1988. And Honda-powered McLaren and Lotus cars will therefore have finished first, second and third, as Ayrton Senna drives very gently across the line. There are the very happy Honda technicians with their flag. Piquet takes the third place, and now Riccardo Patrese, who made his debut for Williams last year in Australia when he was released by Bernie Ecclestone from the Brabham team, will come home in fourth place. And it's a long gap before Patrese comes through, and Alain Prost is meantime driving round on his victory lap, savouring every second of it, no doubt. And now I see Riccardo Patrese exiting the corner, crossing the line to take fourth position. And that's good news for Riccardo Patrese. This is his 176th Grand Prix. He has equalled the all-time record shared by Graham Hill and Jacques Lafitte. And in Brazil of 1989, Patrese will become the driver with the most Grand Prix experience. Crichton Brown on the left, Tim Wright on the right, Richard West with the beard, and Andrea De Cesaris being driven home by Thierry Boutsen. And the results of the Australian Grand Prix were that Alain Prost was the winner, Ayrton Senna in the McLaren second, Nelson Piquet third, Honda engines first, second and third, Riccardo Patrese, the leading 3.5 litre driver in the Williams, fourth place, followed by Boutsen in the points again. There he is taking De Cesaris home, and Ivan Capelli sixth in the march in the points. Certainly a race to remember, and Capelli there is bringing in Philippe Streff. It's quite a pick-a-back ending to the Australian Grand Prix. There are stranded drivers all round the circuit who are pretty anxious not to have to walk home. Quite apart from anything else, they would get no peace at all from autograph hunters, and they are very, very tired men. Neil Trundle, the man who with Ron Dennis ran Rondell Racing, John Connor, and Alain Prost out of the McLaren, while the marshals try to start Capelli, and Streff seems to have to decide that he's going to walk home after all. There is the winner. Alain Prost has done this so many times, and that, sadly, is the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger. So the World Championship ends, as you have just seen. A very easy victory. Ayrton Senna congratulates his teammate. Between them, with Senna having won 8 Grand Prix and Prost having won 7, they have won every Grand Prix except one this year, and that was, of course, the Italian Grand Prix.
So another marvellous victory there for the McLaren team. That is their 10th first second this season in 16 races in Grand Prix, which is a fabulous effort for them. Today it was Alain Prost's turn. He was the dominant figure once, of course, Gerhard Berger was shafted out of here by the Frenchman René Arnoux, which was a shame, because up until then it was a very, very close race. But that's the way it goes. You've done so unpredictable Grand Prix racing, and as we see the thousands and thousands of spectators stream into Pit Straight and into the pits themselves, trying to get a closer look at the cars and the drivers, trying to capture the atmosphere of the '88 Grand Prix, part of the bicentennial year. It's been a marvellous day. The rain held off. We'll probably get a shower later on tonight. It was still very warm, not as trying as yesterday. There we see a couple more of the drivers back into the pits. This is Gerhard Berger. That is a sorry, sorry tale. The Ferrari was going so well. He was leading after lap 26, and then he got the shunt and was out of it, and that was a real, real shame. Darrell Eastlake is down in the pits amongst all those thousands there. Darrell, I hope you've got a story for us.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Well, it's been a very quiet day in the pits today, really, with this race. But, Alan, it's always a race of surprises, and a few of the back markers doing very well.
Yeah, well, it always has a high rate of attrition, this circuit. It's very difficult on brakes. Not so bad on tyres, but the Williams team were worried about their brakes. I don't think that caused Nigel Mansell. I believe he was very tired when he got out of the car, but I refuse to believe it was fatigue. Another great day for McLaren, obviously, another 1-2. Their 15th victory out of 16 starts, an all-time record. But altogether, I think not a bad, fabulous atmosphere and not a bad race for the end of an era.
Thanks, Alan. Well, there it is, comments from the former world champion, Alan Jones. Back to you, Ken.
Okay, thank you, Darrell. Well, it's the winners now on the podium. Alain Prost, flanked by his teammate Ayrton Senna and Nelson Piquet. The French national anthem is now being played, which is rather ironic because Prost now lives in England, but of course his heart is still there. He's still a Frenchman at heart. Nelson Piquet, he's been there so many times before. He had a good final race after a disappointing year. The Professor. It's a nice moment, supposedly between two guys who have little time for each other. I think when it comes down to the end of the day, and they can admire each other's talents. Good on you, Alain Prost. A very, very popular winner here. Just one of the real great champions, and certainly a fan of Alain Prost is Jackie Stewart. He believes that he is the finest driver in Grand Prix racing these days, the smoothest, technically the best. He sees Ayrton as something a little bit different, obviously very, very talented. Also a lot of time for Nelson Piquet. It's the 35th career victory for Prost. He is the great all-time winner of Grand Prix, and now we've got the champagne bath, and everybody's involved. And Bob Hawke has come in for a shower. It had to happen. If you turn up at victory celebrations like our Prime Minister does, eventually somebody's going to get you. And today, he has been got. Unfortunately, our Prime Minister these days is a teetotaler. I don't know whether he got a teaspoonful of that or not. But there they are, the McLaren teammates. Prost, Senna, and they'll be back again next year. And they will be even more formidable, according to Bernie Ecclestone, the boss of FOCA. He believes that Honda spend more money, there's no doubt about that, but they also do it better. They've got the perfect arrangement. They've got motor cars out on the streets, they've got the motorbikes, and they've got Formula One. It is a complete package, and they do it so very well. You can't dispute their ability. In fact, Honda engines took the first 3 placings here this afternoon, so it's a real high note for them to finish up on. Once again, the red Ferrari, and one of those will be driven next year by Nigel Mansell, who will join Gerhard Berger. Michele Alboreto, he's still looking for a ride. In fact, he only got into the first lap, and he dinged his car and he was put out. It was a sad way for Michele to finish his Grand Prix season with the Ferrari team. Well, it's time to take a breath, pay a few bills, and we'll be back in just a few moments with some special moments still to come. Still lots more to come here at the Australian Grand Prix, and right now 2 RAF Mirage jets, RAF Mirage jets flying over the circuit here today. It's all part of the celebration. The Mirage, of course, being phased out, taken place by the F-18 Hornets. So let's just tune in now to what they're saying, because we are able to cut in on the conversation of the Mirage pilots. very, very organised, a slow approach for the Mirage. Obviously, you don't want to break too many sound barriers or they'll be breaking lots of windows. A great hit at the recent bicentennial air show at Richmond in New South Wales. They really did thrill the crowds there.
All right, 5:30, about half mile. How to go?
The pilots talking to one another. All right, now we're got Jackie Stewart, who's a very, very busy man. 1 minute up here in the studio. Next, he's down in amongst the throng, and he has Alain Prost to talk to.
Well, away from the throng, away from the champagne, Alan, 35 Grand Prix victories, a tremendous run for you today. Any complications in your run?
The gearbox was a problem. As usual at the end of the season, gearbox is a weak point in the McLaren chassis. And from second to third was a big problem. I had to change the gearbox since this morning. It was not perfect, but the car was running well, part of that. Engine was okay, fuel consumption was okay, brakes also, which was a problem this morning for me. The only small problem I had is maybe 20 laps to go. I hit something on the ground coming from other cars, and I broken the front skirt, and the car suddenly started to have a huge understeer in the fast corners, and but Ayrton had some problems, so I was okay.
Now, you were able to win this race, 105 World Championship points, and you're not World Champion?
Yes, it's amazing. In 2 seasons, 84 and this one, I get 180 points and not being World Champion. Why sometimes some drivers are World Champion with 35 or 40 points, but the main important thing is, at the moment is, to win this race. It's an historic race for me, because I won my 35 races with a turbo engine, and today is the last race of the turbo engine. So it's one step forward to the legend.
Well, that's a tremendous record, and well done to you. Congratulations. Now to you, Ayrton, World Champion-elect. You had troubles today.
A few ones, but I think Alan drove well. And it was a different race because no pressure, just trying to do your best, but without much pressure. And I think he enjoyed much more this race than on any other this year. So did I, even with the problems. Mainly was a gearbox problem, and the engine was not running very well. And the gearbox just got worse and worse to a point that the second gear is trip, and then first gear as well. And so I was struggling for the last few laps to keep going. But I'm quite happy to have a first and second with McLaren in the last race of the year. And as everybody knows, the last race of a turbo era, so it's a good result.
What about the wrist that was spoken so much about? I noticed you wanted to shake hands with your left hand when you came in here right now. Is it still troubling you, and was it a problem in the race?
Well, it didn't help, but it wasn't really the problem. As soon as the gearbox started to be a problem, then was a problem, because the gear was jumping out. I had to keep the hand on, and it was kicking backwards, so it was bad then. But we made it. We finished 1 and 2, and that is what it matters.
Well, many congratulations, and of course for winning the World Championship. Now, I'll move over to Nelson Piquet, who is in a hurry to get away, I might tell you, because he's flying out tonight. Nelson, you still must be very happy to have finished third after what has been a very difficult season.
Yeah, it's not doubt. It was a very difficult season for me. And that was a good result to finish.
And the car this season, was it any better here in Adelaide than it has been during the season so far?
No, Honda improved the engine a lot after the Japan Grand Prix, and we got a lot of more horsepower and make it easier to compete with another guy. But difference between our car and McLaren is still the same.
And that is mainly in the chassis, you would say?
No, mainly yeah, it is, of course.
Okay, from 3 men who have had a hard and hot day, and from Nelson Piquet, who's rushing to get away, back up to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Of course, they're the first three place getters here this afternoon at the 88 Grand Prix. OK, you're with Nine's Wide World of Sports at the Australian Formula One Grand Prix. The afternoon is not quite finished yet, so don't leave that armchair. We've got special things coming your way. The big race may be over, but the fun is still happening here on Nine's Wide World of Sports. Still to come, a look at the only team to have contested every season since the Modern World Championships began way back in 1950, the Flame Red Ferraris. Make sure you stick around for that. And on a trip down motor racing's memory lane, we'll take you all the way back to 1928, to the very first Australian Grand Prix, raced on Victoria's Phillip Island. So don't loosen your grip on the gear stick quite yet. This is the Grand Prix race day live from Adelaide, and there's still a lap or two to go before we get the checkered flag.
Heavy metal thunder, racing.
Back live at the Australian Grand Prix in Adelaide for 88, and you see the flags of Ferrari. The Ferrari fans, as tradition demands, flock around their heroes, around the Ferrari camp. This is the big trade-off at the end of the year where they sell their T-shirts, they sell their caps, they virtually sell whatever's going on. There you see, of course, the crowd, the big crowd streaming out of the Adelaide circuit. But there is a lot of people just the same staying around in Pit Alley because it's a souvenir hunt on right now. There you are. The auction is taking place. You can buy and sell just about anything except maybe the cars there this afternoon. And it seems to be there's always Ferrari who seem to be in the greatest demand. Old tyres are sold off. Bits of brake padding are sold off and traded. T-shirts, of course. Shirts are taken off people's backs and swapped and so on. But it's a fair bit of horse trading going on, and I seem to believe that the teams do the better out of it. This is regarded as a bit of a bonus for them, especially for the ones who aren't being paid the $6 million of, say, Prost and Senna. This is their little bit of a bonus at the end of the year that they can sell the shirts and whatever else is left over that's going to be useless for next season. The pictures have been marvellous here at the Grand Prix this year. We've had some wonderful, wonderful shots. There you are, sir. Cheap at $85. Why don't you take it right now? It's a cash only, no bank card available, no credit cards accepted. And Australian dollars, well, they're still worth a little bit. And there you can see one of the Italian team members. He's got the cash on hand, and if you want to do business, he's willing to do it with you. But as I said, wonderful scenes, thousands and thousands down in Pit Alley. They don't disperse as quickly anywhere else, as slowly rather, anywhere else except maybe at Monza and also at Monaco. But here in Australia, we hang on and hang on. It is a very special moment. It is the last Grand Prix of the year, the last of 16. And I'm joined once again by Jackie Stewart. You were down there. You looked to have three fairly happy men.
Yes, they were very happy indeed. They were thrilled, as a matter of fact. I'm still, my pants are wet here because I was leaning against Alan Prost's overalls and they're absolutely soaked through. I mean, the perspiration is immense, but they're happy. That's the main thing.
OK, Jackie, we have Pat Lindsay down in the pits.
Mr. Treasurer, a very, very exciting occasion for you and a very different occasion. How does it feel?
Well, I think it's one of the best organised races in the world, and you've got world-class drivers. It's a world-class event, and anything's world-class, good to be at.
The Prime Minister looked as though just for once he got too close to the action.
That's right. That's right. I think if I've got to go back in the plane with him, I'm sure the alcohol will be wafting around. That's a novel experience for him, you know.
I hope he didn't swallow anything.
Oh, I know. I don't think he will have broken the pledge.
It's an extraordinary experience here because the people of Adelaide particularly, and Australia from all around the country, they really get together for this weekend.
Oh, I think great sporting events tend to bring people together. They concentrate on the sport. But these people are world-class, tried and tested every, many times a year. So it's a very high-class act, and I think it's worth seeing. It's good that it's done here in Australia and done well.
Thank you very much. Back to you now, Ken.
Look at the big race.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick. And Patrick there with the Federal Treasurer, the man who, well, I guess if he had Senna and Prost in the country, would fix up the country's deficit very, very smartly. All right, let's now take a look at the Drivers' Championship points landing after the end of the 88 season. Ayrton Senna is the champion-elect with McLaren on 90 points. Alain Prost is on 87. Gerhard Berger finished 3 on 41. 4th, Harry Boutsen and the Benetton, 31. Michele Alboreto, who won't have a drive with Ferrari next year. I'm not quite sure where Alboreto is moving on to, but he is being replaced by Mansell. He finished with 24 in 5th spot, and in 6th spot, Nelson Piquet in the Lotus with 20 points. All right, now the Manufacturers' Championships. McLaren, well, just so easy. I mean, it's a terrific result for them, but they were so far in front of everybody else. It's McLaren in 199, Ferrari 65, Benetton 46, Lotus 21, March 20, Arrows 20, and Williams 20. Right, well, don't you dare touch that dial, because we have plenty more coming up, and I can tell you that we have something very, very special, rather unique, and I know Jackie Stewart is looking forward to seeing it. It was just 4 years ago that Australia hosted a round of the World Formula One Championship. But this country has a Grand Prix tradition that goes back much further than that. The Australian Grand Prix has been held since 1928. It's one of the world's longest continually contested Grand Prix, and we've seen the best in the world come and go in that time. Jack Brabham, Bruce McLaren, Stirling Moss, Jackie Stewart, Nelson Piquet, Alain Prost. They all raced in the Australian Grand Prix before the days when Adelaide came alive. Let's look back at that era when names like Austin and Bugatti dominated the hearts and minds of those earliest petrol heads.
The year was 1928. Australia, like the rest of the world, was locked in the grip of the Great Depression. Stanley Bruce was Prime Minister. Collingwood won the VFL Grand Final. Statesman took out the Melbourne Cup. A 20-year-old Donald Bradman played in his first of 52 test matches. And Australians were in love with the motor car. When it came to competition, though, the accent was on fun rather than performance. Victoria's most fashionable holiday resort at the time was Phillip Island, and it was to Phillip Island that the Victorian Light Car Club came to begin a Grand Prix tradition that has lasted 60 years. No bridge to the island in those days, of course, so the cars for the inaugural Grand Prix had to be painstakingly loaded and transported by ferry and barge. So to the fans, and thousands flocked to the island for the biggest weekend of motor racing in the nation's history. A hodgepodge collection of 26 cars took to a dust track dampened with thousands of gallons of used motor oil. The fastest of them would cover the 169 kilometres at an average of 89 kilometres per hour. And the winner that day was Captain Arthur Waite, an Australian-born enthusiast living in England and working for his father-in-law, Herbert Austin, the man who gave his name to the world-famous Austin car. Arthur Waite, in fact, is still alive today. He lives in Surrey in England and remembers that historic victory as if it was yesterday.
The race itself, no, I don't think one had any fears or frights. I had an extraordinarily good and pleasant mechanic. We had to have a mechanic, you know. In the race, you couldn't drive singly. And of course, we had all the Austin fans and the Austin representatives there. It really was a great thrill.
In 1929, back they came to Phillip Island, as they would for the next 6 Australian Grand Prix. This year, there were the expected throng of tiny Austin 7s, a lone lumbering Aston Martin, and an assortment of Morris Minors, Triumphs and Singers. But the stars this year would be the exotic French Bugattis. 7 were entered and they filled 4 of the top 5 places. The winner was Victoria's Arthur Turdick. Although he would campaign his trusty Bugatti in the next 6 Grand Prix, he would never again do better than 7th. Turdick's brother Alex also made his mark on Australian Grand Prix history. It was he who filmed these rare sequences. In the 1930s, Sydney's Bill Thompson became the first triple Australian Grand Prix champion, winning in 1930, 32 and 33. In 1934, Grand Prix rookie Bob Lee Wright in the lone Singer car in the field upset the Bugattis and MGs. Les Murphy in his MGP type took out the race in 1935, the last time it was run on Phillip Island, and in 1936 when it raced at South Australia's Victor Harbour. In 1938, the Grand Prix moved to Bald Hills near Bathurst to become known later as Mount Panorama. The winner, a wealthy English amateur named Peter Whitehead. The following year, it was back to South Australia to a street circuit in the tiny town of Lobethal, where Perth's Alan Tomlinson won in an MGTA. After the war years, the Grand Prix resumed at Bathurst, where a Bondi garage proprietor named Bill Murray took out the 1947 race in an MGTC. He would later become famous in the Red X trials of the 50s as Jellic Knight Jack Murray. In 1948, yet another venue for the Grand Prix, Point Cook Air Force Base in Victoria. And by now the organisers were rotating the Grand Prix between states. Post-war petrol rationing was at its most severe, and several drivers rounded up passengers for the trip to the racetrack so they could pool their petrol coupons. 25 cars entered, including the only 3-wheel racer ever to contest the Australian Grand Prix, the strange-looking Morgan. But the winner in his first ever race on 4 wheels was motorcycle champion Frank Patter Victoria in a BMW 328. In 1949, the race was held at Laban in Queensland on a circuit laid out on disused wartime bomber runways. 30,000 fans, the biggest crowd so far, saw Sydney's John Crouch win in a French Delahaye. 1950, and the Grand Prix was the main event of the annual Barossa Valley Vintage Festival in South Australia. In the tiny wine-growing town of Nuriyupta, they danced in the streets, a sign of things to come in Adelaide 35 years later. The main problem for race organisers was clearing the streets of revellers as the start time approached. The eventual winner in car number 5, a Ford V8 Special, would be Doug Whiteford, who became the second triple winner of the race when he repeated in 1952 and 53. Here in Nuriyupta, he averaged 116 kilometres per hour over the 164-kilometre distance. Second was Rupert Steele in an Alfa Romeo, and third in car number 21 was Jim Gullen in a Ballot Oldsmobile. In 1954 at Southport in Queensland, Lex Davison in a Jaguar won the first of 4 Australian Grand Prix, a record that still stands today. He went on to win in 1957, 58 and 61. In 1955, a young unknown named Jack Brabham won the race at Port Wakefield in South Australia in an unfashionable Cooper Bristol. Brabham would win twice more in the 1960s. In 1956, Melbourne's Olympic Games year, another famous international name was added to the honour roll.
28 cars line up at the Albert Park circuit in Melbourne for the Australian Grand Prix, and top drivers from Australia and overseas compete. There's Sterling Moss, Britain's ace driver, being wheeled to his start in his powerful Maserati number 7. Moss, who's only 26, is already a worldwide figure in motor racing. They roar away to a good start with Moss prominent in this scratch race of 80 laps over 250 miles. And look at them go, whizzing by at an average of 100 miles an hour. It's not only a race of speed, it's a race of tactics as the drivers roar around the circuit with death riding at their elbows. Moss flashes around the circuit to reach a top of 160 miles an hour, setting a new lap record. Rolling Stones may gather no moss, but this Moss gathers all the honours of Melbourne's Olympic Grand Prix.
As mentioned, 1957 and 58 belonged to Lex Davison in his distinctive red Ferrari, winning at Caversham in Western Australia, then at Bathurst the following year. While 1959 saw his arch-rival Stan Jones achieve his dream by finally winning his first and only Australian Grand Prix in a Maserati at Longford in Tasmania. It was a feat witnessed by his 12-year-old son, Alan, destined for even greater Grand Prix success 2 decades later. In 1960, on an abandoned airstrip at Lowood in Queensland, Canberra's Alex Mildren won the closest Grand Prix finish to date when his Cooper Maserati just pipped the Aston Martin of 3-times champ Lex Davison. Then in 1961 at Malala in South Australia, Davison chalked up Grand Prix victory number 4 in car number 4, a Cooper Climax. Coopers also finished second with Bib Stillwell in car number 6, third with David Mackay in car number 14, and fourth with Bill Patterson in car number 9. Davison would race in the next 4 Grand Prix, and although never finishing closer than 4th, would always be remembered as a 4-time winner of the race, a feat never to be repeated in the 27 years that followed.
See, Adelaide was alive long ago, back in the 60s. All right, more on the fascinating history of the Australian Grand Prix when we return. We've been taking a look back at the history of the Australian Grand Prix, one of the most hotly contested races in the world. We pick up the story again in 1962. It was the beginning of a new era. Gone were the pet cars and the enthusiastic amateurs. Even in isolated Australia, the big boys had arrived.
Come and see the real thing, come and see the real thing, come and see. Come and see the real thing, come and see the real thing, come and see. There's a meaning.
Jack Brabham and Bruce McLaren were the hot favourites in 1962 at Caversham in Western Australia. Brabham crashed with 10 laps to go, leaving the young New Zealander to record an easy victory. At Warwick Farm in Sydney the following year, the twice-world Formula One champion Brabham stayed on the track to beat the best in the world, including next year's world champ John Surtees, defending world champion Graham Hill, and the New Zealander McLaren. 1964 at Sandown, Brabham made it Australian Grand Prix number 3, beating the 1967 world champ Denny Hulme, with Bruce McLaren third. 1965 at Longford in Tasmania, it was Brabham and McLaren again fighting it out, leaving the likes of Phil Hill, Graham Hill and Jim Clark in their wake. McLaren beat Brabham by just 4 seconds. Lakeside in Queensland was the venue in 1966. The winner, the 1962 and 68 world champion Britain's Graham Hill. Then at Warwick Farm in 1967, victory to Scotland's Jackie Stewart, who would win the first of 3 world championships 2 years later. Back to Sandown they went in 1968, where the legendary Jim Clark beat Chris Amon by just 1/10 of a second. 2 months later at Hockenheim in West Germany, Clark would be killed in a Formula 2 race. Lakeside in Queensland in 1969, and the New Zealander Amon went one better, winning easily in his Ferrari. At Warwick Farm the following year, Sydney's Frank Matic in car number 10 started from pole position and shot straight to the lead. Matic was driving one of the 7 Formula 5000 cars in the 26-strong field, a formula that would dominate the Australian Grand Prix for the next 10 years. Matic ended up beating Neil Allen by 7 seconds, with New Zealand's Graham Lawrence 1 second further back in his Formula 1 Ferrari. In 1971, again at Warwick Farm, Matic made it a double in a car of his own design. Then, in 1972 at Sandown Park, it was New Zealand's turn again. Graham McRae in a leader Chevy, winning from future touring car stars Frank Gardner, John Harvey and Robbie Franzovic. In 1973 at Sandown, McRae also made it 2 in a row, winning in another Chevy. The next 2 years, yet another double, this time to Sydney sider Max Stewart, who won at Oran Park and Surfers Paradise. At Sandown in 1976, 2 times champion Frank Matic was no longer driving, but his cars were still winning. John Goss taking out the Grand Prix in a Matic Repco, half a second ahead of Vern Schuppen. 1977 at Oran Park, Warwick Brown was the winner. Then at Sandown in 1978, Graham McRae won his 3rd Australian Grand Prix. And at Wanneroo in Perth in 1979, it was John Walker in a Lola Chevrolet. In 1980 at Calder, Australian Alan Jones, the newly crowned Formula One world champion, shot to the lead in car 27, determined to emulate his father's great victory 21 years earlier. But on lap 6, the Italian Bruno Giacomelli tried to spoil the moment when he bumped wheels with Jones and took the lead. But Jones was not world champion for nothing and came right back at him.
And he's weaving going down a front straight, and Alan Jones is making him attempt to get through. Alan Jones is trying to get round the outside, but he can't make it, and he's gone through on the inside. Alan, what a lovely move. Bruno Giacomelli caught by surprise. Look at the reaction. A little bit of history being made now that you're looking at. Alan Jones being cheered by the crowd, the checkered flag being raised for him, and Alan Jones wins the 45th Australian Grand Prix.
They're racing and Jones wins the sun momentarily.
The 1981 Grand Prix, again at Calder Raceway, was a very different event. Gone were the thundering 5-litre V8s. In their place, the tiny, nimble Formula Pacific cars. Alan Jones qualified second on the grid behind Brazilian Roberto Marino as he tried to capture his second Grand Prix. He looked certain to do just that until 2 laps from home when a failed gearbox put him off the track. It was left to Marino and Nelson Piquet to fight it out to the finish.
And Roberto Marino will drive into Grand Prix history in Australia as he wins the 46th National Panasonic Grand Prix at Calder. Second place will go to the reigning world champion Nelson Piquet of Brazil, and third place to Jeffrey Brabham of Australia.
1982 at Calder yet again, and Marino's hopes of repeating his 1981 success were dashed when he stalled his Ralt RT4 at the start. After that, it looked as though it would be a fight between Nelson Piquet and Alain Prost until Piquet too had a bit of bad luck.
On the 27th lap disaster when 4 cars collide, including former world champion Nelson Piquet and Australian hope John Smith, who quickly recovers. Piquet's race was run.
And so, Alain Prost in car 15, soon to be the double world champion, wins at his first attempt in Australia. For the 4th year running, back they came to Calder in 1983. Melbourne's favourite Italian, Alfredo Costanzo, lost his chance on lap 25 with a smashed differential. Alan Jones, warming up for a return to Formula One the following year, failed to last, spinning out when in second place and finally finishing 5th. Roberto Marino took the opportunity to win his second Australian Grand Prix ahead of Australia's John Smith and French Formula One ace Jacques Lafitte. And it was Marino again in 1984, his farewell appearance at an Australian Grand Prix. When the race became a round of the World Championship the following year, Marino failed to make the transition to Formula One.
And the Australian Grand Prix is go!
1985, of course, was the year Adelaide came alive. It was Australia's first year on the Formula One World Championship circuit, and more than 100,000 fans turned out to ensure a memorable debut. And it was certainly that, as much for the failure of the favourites as anything. Mansell was shunted out of the race on the very first lap by arch-rival Ayrton Senna. Prost, with the World Championship already sewn up, went out on lap 26. Niki Lauda, in his last year of Formula One, looked the winner until his brakes failed on lap 57.
Niki Lauda, and off he goes. Niki Lauda's lost it, and he's completely smashed the front of the car. Lauda is out.
And it was the Williams of the flying Finn Keke Rosberg that finally came through to take the checkered flag.
As Keke Rosberg comes up to win, and well organised the Australians, a truly marvellous race with lots of drama.
70 seconds behind, the two Ligiers of Lafitte and Streff literally climbed over each other in the race for second. Lafitte winning that battle after Streff managed to cripple his own machine. 1986, and in one of the most open world championships in years, Mansell, Prost and Piquet came to the race all with a chance of taking the title. Few of us will forget how Mansell's bubble burst.
He may have been prepared to move over. And look at that! And colossally, that's Mansell! That is Nigel Mansell, and the car absolutely shattered. He's fighting for control, but you can see what's happened. Mansell is out of the race. Now, this could change and will change the World Championship.
It was left to Piquet and Prost to battle it out. Prost winning from the Brazilian and earning his second World Championship.
Takes the checkered flag. He wins the Australian Grand Prix. He wins the World Championship of 1986.
Last year, with the world title already sewn up by Nelson Piquet, Adelaide would witness one of the few recent triumphs of the famous red Ferraris. Austria's Gerhard Berger led virtually from the start.
And Berger is into it. Glenn Dix is out. There he is with the checkered flag. Watch his technique, and watch the technique of Gerhard Berger.
There's no bigger motor racing fan club in the world than the Ferrari followers, and everyone seemed to be a club member in Adelaide that year. And so today saw the running of Australia's Grand Prix number 53, now one of the biggest and most glamorous events on our sporting calendar. It's come a long way in 60 years, from the oil and dust of Phillip Island to the disused aircraft runways of rural Queensland to Victoria, and finally to the front line of World Championship racing on the streets of Adelaide. Something an old man would never have dreamed possible.
Having won the first ever Australian Grand Prix, did you ever imagine that 60 years later it would be one of the world's biggest motor racing events?
I had no idea. If you would have suggested it then, I'd have said, no, it's not on.
Nice piece there by Ken Sparks and Arthur Waite. 94 years of age, Jackie. I wonder if we'll have the pleasure of doing the same with you in the years to come.
Well, I'd love to think about it. If I were still being able to keep my head together like that old gentleman does, I'd be very happy 94. Isn't it wonderful nostalgia, looking back on all those wonderful years and such great names, and what a history this race has and how proudly it's been continued. And today, we just saw the most beautifully put together and organised Grand Prix that you could ever see, and look behind you and see what all that, where it came from.
Yeah, really, really wonderful stuff. And I think the beautiful thing about seeing things like that is that you sort of say, oh yes, I remember him, and where's he, and what's he doing now? And all of a sudden the great memories and the great names flood back. History really saps it away, doesn't it?
I saw a lot of good friends there who I'd raced again, and I wonder just how young Jackie Stewart could have been in that shot that I saw in 1967.
Good-looking guy then. All right, we've got more to come here on Wide World of Sports in Adelaide, so don't go away.